Just comb your hair, go and wash your face. It's been a real long time since you've seen the light of day. So let thoughts come as they may, beauty and parade. Everybody all smiles when you're back in the seat again. On board the Petty Express to a beautiful darkness. It's full steam ahead to ride the rails to our next destination. Yeah!
Hey guys, it is Mo from Mo in the Deep End, your conductress to the Petty Express. We are here for the Jermaine, gosh dang it, in heaven. I cannot remember names to save my life today, so I might misname this man. I'm just going to call him the defendant. The defendant. Oh gosh, what was her name? She was my hero. She was the gangster in the Darrell Brooks trial. She did the mean mug, I can't remember what her name is, but if I ever get the resting mean mug face like her, I will be so proud of me. Now, we are going to Bethany Ross, a criminal intelligence analyst. I did switch over to Court TV. They seem to have at least better descriptions, and they do have the banner on all the time. So I do like that they write things down for me just in case I screw them up because I can't spell, which is always great. Full warning, every member, every VIP on the Petty Express, because everyone is a VIP on the Petty Express. Your conductress is in full F deficit. That is right, full F deficit. So her filter is freaking broken. And I swear, if Penny Problem Glasses voice comes up and hurts my soul again, I will say something. And it won't be good. So beware. Also, gird your loins, people. Gird your loins. Get your earbuds. Possibly get your adult beverages, because Blondie, Penny Problem Glasses voice, Cat Scratch, she has the voice that reminds me of the screaming bowls. Like, I would rather listen to one of those bowls that sounds like the hysterical screaming of the souls of the damned. Honestly, okay, no, I need anyone who likes the sound of those screaming bowls to tell me what they hear. Not because I want to judge you or anything. I don't want to disagree with you. I would just genuinely like to know what people who find those relaxing hear. Because what I hear with those singing, I call them screaming bowls. They're actually singing bowls. But what I hear is the screaming of tortured souls that have been made to watch the Kardashians. So they're this thing that people use in like meditation. You can look them up on YouTube. I'm not going to pull up the thing. I already am in enough pain today. And so, it does make me okay because it is almost Lent. So I feel like, it'll be okay. It's my recovering Catholic. I'm like, okay, well, you're hurting, but it's close to Lent, so it's good. So I might not be giving up anything since I'm doing the pain thing for Lent. I would give up my pain, but apparently that's what makes me strong. Anywho, let's get on to this trial before I go on a tangent for like an hour and 50 minutes like Joe Rogan, which would be cool, but this is not the place. The Mo experience will be coming soon, though. Anywho, we return from our tangent to start our tour. Lady Tammy, I love you, sweetheart, with all the love that I have in my soul, but I am not going to sit and listen until we find a frequency, unless they tie me down. And I'm down with that, but more for smexy time than getting ideologically tortured. Anywho, let's go to the trial.
And spell your name for us.
Bethany Ross, Bethanyross.
Thank you.
Oh,
Good
this
afternoon,
this
Mr. Ross.
headless
good morning.
look is
Good
going to
morning.
kill me.
Please turn to the jury and tell them where you work.
The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
How long have you worked for the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office?
It'll be 10 years next month.
What do you do there?
I'm a criminal intelligence analyst in the Criminal Investigations Division.
How long have you been a criminal intelligence analyst?
About 6.5 years.
What did you do before that?
I was a deputy for about 3.5 years.
Now, when you become a criminal intelligence analyst, what's required of you when you transfer from being a deputy to a criminal intelligence analyst?
Yeah, you're learning completely new technology, completely new applications. It's all about getting information that the detectives may need for their.
And here I thought she was going to say it's less pepper spraying and dealing with asshats. I mean, she probably shouldn't say that in a trial, but I would.
Their case, and then obviously in a prosecution of a case later as well.
Give us some examples so the jury can understand what kind of things you work on during your experience as a criminal intelligence analyst.
So I help identify people in a case. I help give them vehicle information, stuff like that. And then I also map a lot of different things, such as cell records.
So when you're talking about mapping cell records, help us understand the process. What goes into mapping cell phone records?
We get provider information, such as T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon. They give us like an Excel document that has latitude and longitude of, say, like the cell phone tower that cell phone connected to, and from there you can map that information.
Are you the one who generally requests these records from providers such as T-Mobile or Verizon?
No,
Who usually does that?
the detectives.
Now, once the detectives receive that information,
Thank you so much for your super chat, Sarah. Going into the new and improved curse jar. Since we're not doing a shadow box this year, we're doing the curse jar, which I like because. And if you catch yourself using flippity flapjacks or giblets or any hoozle, I apologize incredibly. Oh, this is a bad idea. Okay. We're bringing the jar back. It's aesthetically pleasing, but it's also a pain in the ass to roll my chair there today. As I said, filter gone.
what kind of information is usually inside of the packet that you get?
Yeah, there's got to be a date, a time, that phone number, the target phone number that they were looking for, who that phone number was talking to, if it was voice records, and then it would also be the tower information so that you can map that information.
I'm showing you what's been entered into evidence, and I'll put it on the Elmo here if I can have some help. Thank you.
Oh, now it's brown. Does she have a dimmer switch over there so we can see the screen better, but then it looks like disembodied, Pee Wee Herman, Asamalakan Hekamikam, whatever he said? I mean, no disrespect if that was a real word in any language. I was making things up. I love their music.
This is what's been entered into evidence as States 29. Is this an example of some of those records that you would receive in order to do your job as a criminal intelligence analyst?
Yes.
Okay, and did you in fact receive the documents from T-Mobile in this case that are included in this States 29 involving the defendant, in this case, Jermaine Bass?
I did.
When you receive these documents, help us understand what is the first thing you do when you receive call records from, in this case, for instance, T-Mobile?
I make sure that it has the relevant time that we are looking for, that it is the correct phone number, and then that there is mappable information within those records.
How do you know whether or not there is mappable information in the records when you receive it?
Thank you, Cher Bear, for your super chat and all of your super chats today. And for everyone that's watching and lurking, that likes, that subscribed, that shares this with their friends, that tags it on X, who does, all of those things. I just appreciate everyone's support. I want you guys to know that super chats are wonderful and awesome if you can afford them. But I know the economy. I go grocery shopping. I, have had to dig in the backyard for truffles to buy eggs. So thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you, Rage Crochet. I need to start crocheting again. You guys, they have this wobble set for a amuraguri. Look, I've probably butchered that word, but I'm from the Midwest and we don't say words. of Lord of the Rings, and I looked at it because they have all this awesome, like they have the Balrog scene with Gandalf and Frodo and, the Balrog. Anyhoozle, I looked it up because I wanted to buy it because, why not have some, small crochet thing to do while I'm streaming. Well, it was 200 frippin' flapjack dollars, and I'm like, oh, hell no, I was born blonde, but not yesterday. Also, I was born with a cheap streak. Now, when it goes on sale, I will be buying it. I will also be stalking eBay. But I'm not paying 200 daggone dollars. That's daggone ridiculous. Ooh. I do have Sailor Moon patterns that I'm supposed to be doing, but, yeah.
It's filled out in the latitude and longitude columns. It's filled out in the E-node columns, everything that denotes that a tower is being used and that tower information is present.
Explain to the jury how you became involved in this investigation involving the defendant in this case, Jermaine Bass Jr.
The lead detective, Detective Gabo, asked me to map a certain time period of these records.
Now, tell us the phone number associated with the records that you were asked to map. And if you need your memory refreshed by your report or your map, let me know and I can do that.
Yes, I would have to look at the records for that.
Okay,
Chair
I'm
Bear.
showing you what's been entered into evidence as
Thank you very much. I will do just that. And I will tell Mr. Moe that I was ordered to. And thank you very, very much. When I started this channel, it was really my name, Moe in the Deep End. Thank you so much. It was a leap of faith. This was actually a dream of mine, but I never had the courage to actually do it. Or, let's be real, the internet technology know how to do it until someone offered me a chance. And before that, because I got hurt right around when the Rittenhouse trial happened, and as a mom, a stay-at-home mom of 6, so 3 years ago I got hurt, and I'd been a stay-at-home mom of 6 for 12 years nearly. I'd just gotten my youngest kid into school, and I was like, holy cow, I have time to myself. What am I going to do with me? And then I got hurt, and I was forced to sit down. And I was in so much pain, I hadn't been diagnosed yet. But I found Nick Rekieta and him watching the Rittenhouse trial. And Nick probably doesn't know it. And, I never really super chatted because I never really got into the big chats. But his humor, him talking, him, explaining things in the trial, his interaction with all the people that he brought on, took my mind off of things and got me through the day and, distracted me. And then I found, MLS, and I, found a chat that I felt comfortable with. And if you're lurking, please know this is a great chat. It's not a huge one. We're not going to bite. We're pretty, dark humored. We don't get offended by much. We don't, we won't bite. We're a little odd, but we're like the island of misfit toys. We're all cool, but we're a little wonky. So I strive every time I'm on stream to be that for you guys, to be that distraction, and to, Legal Vices. Yeah, I loved him too. I loved all of LawTube. I got really into it. In fact, Mr. Moe barred me from telling him about Daryl Brooks ever again. Ever. Like, he's glad I found my... If you ever have seen Blind Melon, No Rain, I have found my bee people. I was out here tap dancing by myself, being happy. But, I found my bee people, and MLS gave me a chance. I guess I was just popping off in chat as I want to do. And he was like, Mo, you're funny. Do you want to come on? And He was so sweet. He gave me a tutorial before because, again, me with technology. So he walked me all through, StreamYard and helped me. And then you guys encouraged me to do my first videos. And it just grew from there. And I am so amazed. I can't tell you guys, not that I don't love being a mom, and I love it. It's my first career. But for 12 years, Mo kind of went by the wayside. She kind of got lost, and that happens. It really does, and it's not something that you need to beat yourself up with if you're having a time right now where you're not quite sure who you are beyond being a mom or, whatever label you are. If you find a small thing to, connect you to you, it can be journaling. Now, honestly, I don't like journaling, but some people really like it. Finding something that gives me a chance to just be me and not mom, not wife, has been awesome. So I love this. I'll probably always do YouTube regardless of numbers or subs or things like that, because it helps me, and it is nice to feel like I'm paying it forward. I have been the recipient of such love and kindness and support, and I hope that I pay that forward through, watching the tough trials with you, or, being open with my struggles so you guys know that you're not alone, or, that kind of thing. That's why I get up, every day and stream for you, even on rough days like today. I will be buying things to help me convert Mr. Mo's room into somewhere where I can stream from his bed comfortably, because it seems like this winter is intent on kicking my behind. But after I have said all of that, and again, many, many things beyond words, let's get back to the trial. Because honestly, I'm going to start crying and Oprah's not here. And if I'm going to cry on stream, Oprah better be here, or it better be victim impact statements. Because I do like funny and dark humor, but sad is not an emotion I like. So that's why we use dark humor here. I'm sure y'all can relate.
States Exhibit 21. Is this a map you created along with your experience and involvement in this investigation?
It is, yeah.
Can you read out to the jury the phone number that was used in order to map in this investigation?
That's 813-696-7195.
Do I have permission to publish to the jury, Your Honor?
Yes.
To aid in your testimony,
Oh my God. Okay, wait, we need to take another pause. But Donna Adelson getting all pissed off because she's, getting all fat. Like, join the Fluffy Cup, lady. You're in Tallahassee, God's butthole, okay? Like, she's complaining about the level of carbs, like she can't get a good bagel or something. Like, that's our problem. Like, seriously, the rest of us are fluffy. Give it a break. She's acting like, we made her walk in the desert for 40 years. I mean, this is the woman that told her daughter that, I don't know, she should dress her sons up. Her sons that are fully Jewish, okay? Fully. In Mr. Hankety Clankety from WW2, okay? In his little youth uniforms to piss him off. Now, who does that? Tell me, who does that? Who thinks of that, okay? She's garbage. Garbage. And I hope she stays there with the poors, all right? Because Donna Adelson being with the poors is where I need her to be. I can't believe she's like, look, they're carbs. They're making me fat. Thank you, Cher Bear. It was just like, it was the 30th Amendment, the Adkins Amendment. If one is hurting from carbs, well, she was assaulted too. Okay, I'll be fair. But again, this woman, look, if it looks like a duck, swims like a duck, and quacks like a duck, hello, Canton, it's probably, murder for hire. And I cannot believe they actually laundered the money. The money that they paid to these three morons, Larry, Curly, and Boobs, they washed it and stapled it. Who does that? Like, who in God's green earth actually launders the money? That case is a dumpster fire over a nuclear volcano. And I am here for it. I am waiting for her to cry about carbs. Like,
Before I do that, so you receive these T-Mobile records, you make sure that they have information that is mappable. What do you do after that?
From there, we use a program called CellHawk that actually takes that file and creates that map so that it's not like I'm hand drawing it. It can make that map.
You told us that you've been a criminal intelligence analyst for, 6 years?
Yes.
During that process of becoming a criminal intelligence analyst, did you receive training in how to use this program that you described as being called CellHawk?
Yes.
What's the training involved? Just briefly describe it for us.
Yeah, they take you through every step of getting the records, looking at the records, and then mapping those records and how to interpret that information.
When you put the records into the program, does it map it for you?
It does.
Then what do you do after this program produces the map?
I take a screenshot of that in order to put it in a document with all of that original information that we got from T-Mobile so that we can see it together.
So when you initially become a criminal intelligence analyst and you learn how to use CellHawk, do you maintain any sort of continuing education on the changes that happens with updating technology?
I do. I have to keep up to date with that stuff because it changes constantly. So at least once a year, there's webinars and a lot of different information out there that I'll keep up with.
And do you maintain that continuing education for the CellHawk process?
I do.
Tell the jury approximately how many times during your career as a criminal intelligence analyst that you've used this mapping process with this program called CellHawk.
Hundreds of times.
So in this case, the investigation involving Jermaine Bass Jr., the defendant, you receive his cell phone records from, who's the provider?
T-Mobile.
And tell the jury what you do next.
Once I have that screenshot, then I will put it together in a document to give to detectives and put in the case.
So I'm placing on the Elmo what's been entered into evidence
Thank you, Cher
as
Bear.
States 21. Is what we're looking at in States 21 an example of the mapping that you just discussed?
Yes.
So you use the information provided within the T-Mobile records, you put it in this program, and this is what it spits out.
This screenshot is, exactly.
Okay, so I want to talk about the map. Let's orient the jury what we're looking for in the map, okay? On the bottom left-hand portion, I see West Shore. I'm pointing to it with my finger. In fact,
so, Sarah Adams, this has been a hallmark of this trial. Every time there's a witness up there, it looks like they dim the light and then they are disembodied heads. We did see the either younger brother or distant cousin / identical young twin, possible clone, just speculating. In full Alex Jones, I'm just asking questions. No, that's Jesse Ventura. And you go, I'm just asking questions. But we did see a Steve Gosney lookalike yesterday as the medical examiner, which did make the medical examiner testimony about the poor reality of how baby Jayla, I call her baby, she's 5 years old, but look, still a baby to me. I reserve the right to call her a baby as the conductress. Anywho, this beautiful little girl and how she passed, and the fact that she received 3 gunshots to her head was heartbreaking. So focusing on the fact that the medical examiner looked like Steve Gosney was much more, what we did in chat. Now, they could have made this bigger and made a poster, but no, we decided to use the Elmo, and we're looking at like 0.5 font. Thank you.
there is a line right through the word West Shore. Is that West Shore Boulevard here in Tampa?
Yeah, West Shore Boulevard is in that area, and that West Shore is denoting that that's kind of the area, West Shore.
Right above that, we see another line and another, it's two lines
No
together.
tickle
It's
me
like almost kind
Elmo,
of a
no
pie
Elmo
chart
in court.
situation right above Tampa International Airport. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Oh, sure. And for the record, I'm zooming in so that we get a closer look at what I just pointed out to be the West Shore in the bottom left-hand corner area and what the witness has described as Tampa International Airport right before that. Right to the left of Tampa International Airport, we see symbols that look like it would be some sort of highway with a circle, a white circle that has numbers on it. What is that representing?
Yeah, that's showing 589, excuse me, and this is using actually like Google Maps information.
And then if we go up in the middle, we're seeing two like, half pie graph almost situations. To the right of that, we're seeing University Square. Tell us what area we're looking at now.
Yeah, the university area or the University Square area.
Are we going to explain what all these things mean? Because I am confused beyond all imagining, which is not an unusual state for me, but maps and little symbols I don't understand make me confused.
Right through that, we see yellow lines and a marker that is commonly known to be an interstate marker. Tell the jury what interstate marker that would be.
I-275.
Tell us about the text boxes that we see on the map. We're going to go one by one, but a general understanding of where does this information come from? Does the CellHawk program produce the map along with these text boxes?
No, the CellHawk program gave me that map, and from there I go back to those records to copy paste this tower
Howdy
information,
music,
the
man.
date and time, and that incoming or outgoing call information, along with the duration, into these little text boxes so that I can show exactly how that tower relates to the information that T-Mobile gave us.
Now, throughout the map, and again, we'll go one by
Share Bear, I wish there were a better reason other than pure evil. I mean, we always want an answer because we want to be able to stop it or understand or logic it or make it make sense. But chaos and evil and darkness don't make sense. I think that's the biggest point. Some people are just evil. And I wish we could all send them, well, not to Guam. Again, what did they do with the Epstein Island? Could we send them all there? I mean, I know it's a tropical paradise, but if we don't send them food and they have to hunt their own, I mean, I'm kind of okay with Hunger Game. I mean, allegedly in Minecraft. This is why I shouldn't be in power.
one. We see what looks like lines that have like a half circle on them. I also see one that is a full circle. What do those symbolize? Just so the jury understands before we go one by one.
For that full circle, T-Mobile is not able to give us a direction, so we just have a 360 around the tower. For example, to the left of that, it's showing kind of southeast, and that means T-Mobile was able to give us a direction, which is southeast of that tower.
So what do these markers or the pie graphs or the circle, what does it indicate? You're saying it indicates a tower, but what about the tower?
That tower was in communication with that cell phone during that incoming or outgoing call.
So the purpose of the shape or the marker on the map shows us where the cell phone is at any given time?
It at least shows the direction from the tower that the cell phone was in.
Okay, so I want to start at the top text box. We see a full circle, which again indicates to you that the cell phone is bouncing off this tower,
Yes.
correct?
Yes,
But it's not indicating to you a location in which it's heading. Is that safe to say?
exactly.
Now, we see a line with, it's an arrow to the right of the circle, and we see a text box that I'm pointing to. It's the topmost portion on the right side text box. Explain to us what that means, that text box.
It starts with the E node B, the sector, and the azimuth, which is all going to be tower information. That azimuth is blank. I just have a dash there because we don't have a direction, and that's actually where that would come from. The location is followed by that, and that's literally the latitude and longitude of the tower. And then we have the date and the time, and it was an incoming call from this phone number, 361-217-7632, and the duration is 0 seconds. There was no duration.
So we have that at 6:04:03 p.m. Next in time, we see to the left, two lines intersecting, right encompassing the words University Mall. It encompasses the two first letters U and N. Explain to the jury, and if you need to stand up and point or come over here and point, Judge, does she have permission to do that?
Sure,
If you
probably
can,
going to you is probably best.
yes, ma'am. If you can please come around so that you can point to yourself on the Elmo.
Make sure you describe with words too.
Or, and I know this is crazy, but hear me out. Hear me out. They sell yardsticks at every Walmart and these dowels that you can use as a pointer. You could even bedazzle it or cover it in decoupage with Ruth Bader Ginsburg quotes. And I say that because when you look at this woman's courtroom, she went to the inspirational section of Hobby Lobby and got everything, plus Lady Liberties all over.
So specifically, and I'm going to rearrange. We see a top text box on the top left corner. I'm pointing to it right now. From that text box, we see a red or orange arrow pointing to the pie graph encompassing the first two letters of the word University Mall. Now, I noticed that this graph we're looking at, the symbol is different than the circle. And if you don't mind, can you come around this way instead of there to point so that we're just not blocking the jurors? Can you point to the University Mall one and explain to the jury the difference between the circle we just saw and the information that it provides to you and this pie graph that we're looking at that's kind of like a semicircle with two lines? What's the difference?
So in the original one, the circle, right in the middle of that is going to be where that tower is, where that line is inside that circle. Instead, on this one, it's where these two lines meet. The tower is actually going to be right there, and we get that southeast direction because it's kind of facing southeast.
The semicircle that we see shaded in connecting those two lines, what does the semicircle symbolize to you?
This is just a display. It's half a mile out from the tower. That does not mean that the cell phone was half a mile out from the tower. It's a traditional kind of display for this type of information.
And let's talk about the text box that's associated. We pointed out before the top most left one. We see it says the E node B, the sector, and explain to us, the one before didn't have an azimuth. What is an azimuth?
Yeah, this azimuth is 120, and that's a degree out of 360 of a circle.
The pronunciations from people in this case, comforter and azimuth. It's azimuth. We don't emphasize the ass, although I would. I mean, if I were in court, I'd be like, ass myth. But that's why I would always be in contempt. But it's azimuth, not azimuth. All right, let's continue.
So that 120 gives us the southeast. That's what the azimuth is.
So the 120 or the numbers next to the word azimuth indicate to you a directionality
Exactly.
of the cell phone itself or of the tower.
That's the direction the cell phone was in from the tower.
So the cell phone in relation to the tower, you can tell to a certain degree.
Yes.
Okay, so in this one we see 120. Now we see the location, which you indicated before is latitude and longitude, is that correct?
Exactly.
We see the date 8/29/2022 at 7:15:21 p.m. Tell us what the outgoing call number is.
Okay, call me crazy, but I'm not a smart person in this stuff. Now, if I were a lawyer person and I was trying to get simple information out of this, I would make a line, like a dotted line, here, from here to the tower, instead of this bullcrap with the 120-degree circle that's all confusing. Now, call me crazy, but if you wanted to explain something to a jury that was simple, you'd make a dotted line and say, this is where the phone was in relation to the daggone tower, approximately. But call me crazy. Because all this looks like Chinese, this looks like the worst job in history, this looks like torture and math. And if the jury is like me and they see math and they see geometry, they are flipping checking out. So unless you make this simple with the little dotted line, I mean, honestly, use a crayon, draw a line. That's not that hard. Get a dry erase board. If we can do it on YouTube and explain, fairly intelligently, look, we're on YouTube. And I'm a lay person, not a YouTuber or not a law tuber, so I don't. But honest to God, if you used a wet erase, go back to freaking school and use one of those wet erase pens. I've got a bunch of them because I have a well, office supply addiction and enough whiteboards to, if I were into, mathology, I could figure out string theory. That being said, make it easy.
That's 813-516-3376.
Now, outgoing call, does that mean the number listed above, 813-696-7195, is the one who dialed out?
Exactly.
And if we see a label later on, incoming call, does that mean that the number listed below the words incoming call placed the call and dialed to 813-696-7195?
Exactly.
Okay.
So the next in time, we see.
Because this is too much information. Again, the jury really doesn't care about all of these. If you need to label these, put these on the side if they need to be labeled as, a document in legal fashion. But what you are using as a demonstrative for the jury should be as simple as possible. There should be a timeline on this side going, with all the calls, and then they correlate to this in an easy. Thank you so much, Chair Bear. But when lawyers do this, especially in a child case, okay, here's the thing. The jury has just seen, and I do mean just seen, thank you so much, Chair Bear, piss me off, Char, has just seen the autopsy photos of this little girl, I do believe. Or the day before, they have seen the autopsy photos of this little girl. They're going to be trying their best to get justice for this little girl and this boy who has had his life permanently scarred. Make it easier on them. If you need this particular information, this E-node, the sector, the azimuth, all that, put it to the side or put it in smaller font. Make this bigger, put an actual timeline on it. There's too much information here. It doesn't make sense. It is too crowded. It's too busy. And if you have ADHD like I do, this looks like too much. It looks overwhelming. I almost don't want to look at it. I mean, look, I look at it, it's not hurting me, it's not a microaggression or anything, but what I can tell you is that my mind is overwhelmed with all of this, and it's not going to make as much sense. So whatever you're presenting to the jury should be in smaller and easier to understand bites. And legal and law schools should start really bringing in jurors, bringing in regular people and asking them if they understand things, how they could communicate better. Because maybe a lot of the judgments we've seen that we not understand or look completely insane to us because we watch the trial and we understand this because this is our jam, would be fixed if we actually made an effort to put things in easy and simple to understand forms. This demonstrative does the exact opposite of what it's supposed to do, which is clarify and simplify information. Rant over. I'm speaking up for the jury because this is confusing.
See 7:16:04 p.m. For the record, I am pointing out a text box that is the second from the top on the top left side. We see an arrow coming from that, pointing to two lines that intersect with a semicircle.
Thank you,
that
Cher
is
Bear.
right below, encompassing the bottom portion of the N on North Tampa.
Share Bear, $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Holy hail, just let Mo rule and run the court. What's wrong with these people? I think that they forget that they're not performing for other lawyers. And thank you so much. Hello, Kathy Michelle. I think they forget that they're supposed to be talking to their fellow man, their fellow, citizen. I think they do, and I don't think it's on purpose. I think a lot of their interactions are with other lawyers. But I think that the ones that actually do go to trial should really invite, maybe advice or, input from people who would be potential jurors. I think that, you really should have acting or dictation classes in law school. I think you should have mic appreciation classes or how to wear a lapel mic. I will actually be getting a lapel mic so that I can sit on, the bed. But, making sure that people can hear you, how to project, how to enunciate, how to, correctly give, how to read a room. Maybe that would be great. Now, I don't know which classes I could teach them, but I require wigs and possibly an emotional mini Shetland Highland or cow. I need a baby Highland cow emotional support animal, but I am willing to go around all the countries to what is it? Teach all the children and people and lawyers.
See that to be to the left of Busch Gardens, Tampa Bay. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now,
Ooh,
tell us
Busch Gardens.
what information that you were able to receive and what that line and semicircle means to you based on this information.
So exactly like before, those two lines intersect, and that's where that tower is. But what's different this time is it's facing northeast. In addition, we've got the
I have
incoming
one.
call from 813-516-3376, and it was a duration of 65 seconds.
So this number, 813-516-3376, placed a call that was answered by 813-696-7195, and we previously identified that the 696-7195 belongs to the defendant. So let's talk about the next call in time. We see, let me get it on the map correctly. 8:37 p.m. We see it's the third text box on the left side, touching the left portion of the map. We see arrow coming below, and we see two lines with a semicircle right above the word Tampa International Airport. Tell us what information you were able to gather during your investigation about this specific time, August 29th, 2022 at 8:37:56 p.m.
There's actually another one that's at 8:20, which was just before it.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so 8:20, here we go. 8:20 and 43 seconds. We see this one almost looks like a straight line with more of a semicircle than we've seen before, right below the words West Shore, with an arrow coming out the bottom corner of a text box. If you're looking at the graph, it would be second from the bottom text box to the left. We see at 8:29:22, at 8:20:43 p.m. Tell us what that symbol is, because it looks a little different than the other ones that we've seen so far.
I had to divide this one into the left sector and the right sector because that tower is used multiple times, but with different sectors. So this one in particular, 8:20, is the.
So what it looks like is that he kept trying to call her. She went out to a dinner. She went out by herself. Now, there has been allusions to possible DV, or at least a lot of friction in their relationship. Also coupled with the fact that he left the children at home by themselves to go follow her to the restaurant and actually had a confrontation with her at the at least on the interstate, according to a witness. This has been backed up at least with possible, a vehicle that looks very much like his vehicle passing and going directly to Ruth Chris to confront her, to make sure that she hadn't been drinking or anything else. Now, this looks like controlling behavior, and my guess is that here's what I think happened, and I could be very wrong about this, so this is all my speculation. She either said, "I'm done, I'm going to leave," and he said, "I'll take everything from you." Now, I find it very telling that he left his daughter upstairs, and when first responders came in, he was holding his son but left his daughter upstairs. Now, we haven't heard about the injuries from the son yet, but it seemed like the son got either one or two bullets or wounds, and the daughter had 3, and they were placed I won't be drawing a face because this is just heartbreaking. But left side, right about the temple, right between the eyebrows, and right by her left cheek near her nose was the grouping of the 3 bullets that entered this little girl's head. Now, I do wonder if either A, he thought that the little girl was not his and therefore, was more intent on getting to her, or B, Shirley, the mother, had a very special relationship with her daughter, possibly. And again, if he had unalived Shirley that night, her suffering would be done. He wanted her to suffer forever, at least in my general opinion. I could be wrong. I'm not a doctorologist. I'm just a person that watched way too much true crime. So those are my guesses.
The left sector, this one right here.
Okay.
And that's going to be an incoming call from the 727-315-3379 number. And the patient.
It's 3329.
Oh, I'm sorry about
Well,
that.
you are backwards.
Or
Okay.
you're not going to take my
Yes.
kids.
And that duration is 0 seconds on that one.
You can leave, but my kids are mine. They stay here.
Okay, so what is the 0 seconds into keep to you?
It most likely was not answered. It didn't complete.
Okay, so that's 8:20 and 43 seconds. Then we have 8:37 and 56 seconds. This is the one that we were talking about before, where there is a symbols above Tampa International Airport. Tell us what you know from your investigation of this specific symbol at 8:29 on August 29th of 2022 at 8:37:56 p.m.
So this one is facing practically north, and it's an incoming call from 727. Let me not mess this up. 315-3329, and that duration is 0.
Let me just, sorry. I'm gonna make sure this is in the correct position. So then we see a text box on the right, it's the right bottom quarter, and we see at 8:29:22 at 10 o'clock with 30 seconds p.m. Tell us what information that you were able to gather during your investigation.
Have
about
good.
this
Take care of the
specific-
nugget. Hold him tight for
So
us.
we are now on the right side of this tower that we talked about before, that's just in this West Shore area. And this is an outgoing call to 727-315-3329, and it was a duration of 15 seconds.
Right below that, included in the same text box, we see 8:29:2022 at 10 p.m. and 54 seconds. Tell us what you were able to learn about that specific hit off the cell tower.
Yep, same, it's the same right sector here, and it's going to be the outgoing call to 727-315-3329 for 5 seconds.
Let's move below the bottommost portion. We have, there we go, it's centered now.
Although here's my only problem with that, Kathy Michelle. A scrotum suspension device is needed in this case, and I agree, but do we pay hazard pay to the person that has to put it on? Because that's a hazard pay job, right? I would think. Like a double pay, at least triple. And like all the gloves, like I'm going to need those purple gloves, and then I'm going to need those dishwasher gloves. Or find a person that likes scrotums, I guess. It's not a job if you love your work.
Text box on the bottom. And we see at 8:29 of 2022, 10:01 p.m. and 43 seconds, an outgoing call to 727-315-3329 with a duration of 43 seconds. Show the jury where that cell tower pinged.
So the tower is right here where these two lines intersect, and we're a little bit farther south from the other tower that we've been talking about, still in the West Shore area, and it's facing basically north or northeast.
Now we're looking at the top quadrant. We've already discussed the topmost portion of the text box. And we see that the circle that we have has an arrow next to it with a text box we already talked about from 6:04 p.m. But below that, it looks like there's 2 other phone calls. So I want to discuss 8/29/2022 at 10:19 p.m. and 37 seconds. Tell us what you learned during your investigation.
So it is this one with the full circle here, and it is an incoming call from 727-315-3329.
Below that, oh, sorry, go ahead. Okay. Below that, we see it's within the same text box, August 29th of 2022. We see at 10:34 p.m. and 58 seconds. Tell the jury what you found
Support your local dominatrix. I like it. I like it.
out during your investigation.
That one is an outgoing call, and it is to 813-516-3379, and that duration is 5 seconds.
And that information indicates to you that this phone number belonging to the defendant called out at 10:34 p.m. and 58 seconds, correct?
Yes.
May I have just a moment, Judge? I don't have any further questions.
All right.
No, no, no. God, no. For the love of all that is holy. To the spirit of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, shut this woman up. I mean, let's listen to what the defense has to say.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so you are not here today testifying as an expert in cell phone mapping, correct?
I don't know if they've listed me as an expert, or I don't know.
All right. Have you ever been in court before and you are declared an expert? Are you aware of anything like that?
There was one time during a federal trial, yes.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
So, Eris, it looks like they are showing the fact that while Jermaine was following his wife to the restaurant, he was attempting to call her and call her and call her. So this might be a building block. Again, it seems like there are a lot of things in this case that they are not allowed to talk about for motions in limine. I believe that Shirley had some past bad acts and a couple of different things, like the fact that I think that Jermaine had filed for divorce, but they maybe stayed together. So there's a couple of things that indicate that this was not a good relationship. I don't know if the prosecution is using this as a building block to show that Jermaine was controlling. He didn't want his wife to go out. He constantly called her, tried to get in touch with her, basically ruining her going out to be with her sister. And then maybe this being, not that they have to show a motive, but this might be, them sort of trying to show a motive through the evidence, even though they don't implicitly have to have one. So that's kind of where we are. The defense is like, you're not an expert. To be fair, that demonstrative proves that, but she is able to take all of the information from the phone and show that he was constantly calling her when she was out with her family.
So basically, let me get the gist of what you do. You receive a CDR, correct?
Yes.
In this case, you received a CDR of Jermaine Bass, our client.
Yes.
Right. You took that CDR, you plug it into CellHawk, which is the program.
Yes.
Right. And in your own words, CellHawk spits out the data, right?
It creates the map, yes.
Creates the map, right? And you said something about a screenshot. So CellHawk creates the map. Is it going to create exactly what we're looking?
This lawyer, this condescending, I am better than you lawyer, is probably the first heifer to put on her little, like Facebook and Instagram. I'm a ladyist. I'm for the women's. I love women's, girl power. But she is over here talking to this other professional woman like she doesn't have 2 brain cells to rub together, and she's only there because she can push a button. I hate women like that. Look, you can post all the crap you want on Instagram about girl power, but if you're going to sit here and talk about, or talk to this woman like she doesn't have, the ability to not drown because she forgot to swallow her spit. She needs to be told to, swallow her spit, otherwise she would drown. It's a bit ridiculous, and you sound like a cahoot. And, as a jurist, on the internets, I can tell you that I would vote guilty for you. You are getting your client sent to death row, okay? Maybe don't be insufferable, possibly. You know, I mean, that would just be my suggestion. You're welcome. I give these tips out all the time.
Out besides your additional boxes.
Exactly.
Okay. You take a screenshot of it, and then you're going to go what, back to the CD or the same.
Jen, I hope your little guy is feeling a little better. I do know that the brat diet works for my kids. Bananas, rice, applesauce, toast, and tea. They don't really like the tea, but they do like the toast. So I don't know if that helps. Every kiddo has their own sick meal that they need.
Same CDR you used and make your little boxes?
Exactly.
Okay. What else do you do?
After that, I need to put it all together in this document, and this is a header that we typically use on all of these documents, so I add that header, and I'll
like
add my signature and the date.
Okay. Like prepared by
Exactly.
CIA Ross and then up here HCO case. Okay. What do you do to validate what CellHawk has told you?
So what's good is with latitude and longitude, you're able to throw that into Google Earth, Google Map, whatever, and that is able to show the exact pinpoint that CellHawk has made where that tower is. That's how you can verify those records.
Okay. So is that your testimony that that's how you're verifying the CDR?
Yes.
Okay. But that again is going to come, the latitude and longitude, from that CDR.
From T-Mobile, yes.
Okay. Now, in terms of where a tower is located, did you do any verification of what CellHawk spit out by doing a drive test?
No, that's not typical.
This bitch using spit out. You know what? First of all, ma'am, your snark is annoying. Mine is awesome. Second of all, your voice is like cats' souls dying. Stop it. I said stop it. Seriously, I'm about to turn this trial around and go get a Frosty.
For us.
Were you ever requested to do a drive test?
No.
All right. This CDR that you were given it by Detective Gabo, correct?
Yes.
All right, he gave you a specific date and a
Gabo.
specific time?
Yes.
All right. You did not receive CDRs from any other individuals, correct?
No, not that I recall.
Okay. I wanted to ask you a little bit about, for example, when we see a zero duration in the map you made.
My favorite saying.
You agree with me that T-Mobile doesn't really give you in very plain, simple English if a specific call with a zero, if it was answered or not, correct?
Exactly. You have to, yeah, you don't know.
You don't know, okay. And in fact,
Okay. Not to encourage fluffy kid behavior, but they do have a Girl Scout mint Frosty. Now, sadly and shockingly, as a nearly entire lifelong fluffy kid, sugar is not really tasting all that great now. Really, nothing is tasting all that great now. So it sounds tempting, but I did try it. Now, my taste buds are all wonkified, so it tasted pretty good. I just couldn't finish it all. So I'm not going to get into food reviewing right now. Let's just put it that way, because it's basically like everything tastes a little off.
isn't it true that there could actually be other calls as well that are not mapped? CellHawk doesn't map them because, for example, there are some reasons it just didn't connect. That call didn't connect to the tower. It was iPhone to iPhone, or there could be signal issues. So there might be other calls, and for some of those reasons, they won't get spit out by CellHawk.
Yes, they can't be mapped because that mapping information just doesn't exist.
Right. Okay. Now, did you use a cell site list to verify your data?
Yes.
Okay. Which cell site list did you use?
So T-Mobile has uploaded to the CAST team on Leap. It's a government website that the FBI uses. They have cell phone towers uploaded into there on a regular basis, and that's the one that we use within CellHawk.
Okay. Did you use it specifically in this case?
I did.
Okay. Which version, or what was the date or approximate
I like
date
it too.
of the cell site list from T-Mobile did you use?
October of 2022?
All right. Were you aware that in August of 2022, T-Mobile and Sprint merged?
I don't know the exact date, but I know that they merged.
Okay.
Yes.
And you used October. Is there another one also in December of 2022?
There should be, yes.
Okay. Now, when you're on CellHawk, you get a little box that even pops up and tells you, you better use that cell site list because that's the best practice, right?
Exactly.
All right. And it's your testimony you did that in this case.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you and just clarify a little bit about this as
No, she was like, it popped up the little warning screen, and she was like, YOLO, FAFO, not going to do it this time. You did that right. I mean, you understand your job. even though it wasn't written in crayon. I'm so proud of you. Bless your heart. This woman.
So let's look
The
at
smug. I might just
the
die
one
from the fumes.
715. For example, we have it as upper left-hand corner of your map, 71521, pointing over to that very first, what do you call that? With the lines in the shaded circle.
Right here.
What do you call that?
This is like a sector.
Sector, okay. And so that's that first sector, correct?
Yes.
All right. So now, what is the azimuth for that sector?
That one's 120.
What does that mean?
It's 120 degrees of that 360 degree of a full circle. So they choose 120 to be that southeast portion.
Southeast portion, all right. So
Oh, for the love of all that is unholy. This woman heard the first woman say, hath a myth. And now that's how she's going to say it because she thinks that's the right way. It's azimuth. You really don't need to emphasize the ath. And it's not azimuth. Oh, these two are teaming up to hurt my ears.
So you're not telling us that that phone is in that shaded portion, correct?
Exactly, that is not the case.
Right. What's the radius? Can you tell us what the radius would be of where that phone may be?
No, these towers, this information does not have like a radius and a distance from the tower, just the direction.
Right. So in fact, all you can tell us is what you have plotted, that that cell phone is in that direction from that tower.
Exactly.
Okay. It doesn't mean it's in that shaded area at the time.
Right, exactly.
It just means it's in the direction from the tower. So in this case, we would have, I think you said, is it southeast, or for that first one, it's 715?
Southeast.
Southeast, okay. So we don't know how far, it's not in the shaded area, but somewhere that phone is in that direction, southeast, from that area.
Exactly.
Okay, simple as that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you're not telling this jury you can place an exact location of a phone?
I cannot.
Okay, you cannot give us a location if it's at a restaurant or sitting on the interstate, you can't give us any of that, correct?
Right.
Okay. And you cannot, with the records you received in this case, give us any idea how close to the tower itself that phone may be.
Right.
Did you ever receive timing advance records in this case?
I don't recall if I did or not.
Are those a little bit more accurate in?
So they may have that distance from the tower that we talked about before.
Gotcha. Are you aware that when Detective Gabot did his search warrant in this case, and he just talked about it, that he requested timing advance records?
I don't know.
You use timing advance records pretty commonly in this,
Yes, when we do get them.
and you're going to get better information.
Sometimes, yeah.
Okay. So in this specific case, the only thing you had was the CDR data, not any sort of more accurate timing advance records.
As far as I remember, yeah.
Besides the CDR itself, and we have it in evidence here, what else do you recall actually receiving from T-Mobile, if anything?
It comes with possibly data information. It depends on how they package it and give it to us, but I use just the voice records on this one.
All right, we're not talking about data, use of data.
No.
Okay. All right. Looking at my notes to see if I have any other questions for you. May I have a moment?
Yes.
Thank you, Judge.
No, no, don't stand back. No more. No. I said no. The spirit of Ruth Bader Ginsburg compels you.
Counsel has reminded me, please just tell the jury what a drive
No.
test is.
A drive test is you use a device, this sort of like box that goes with you in the car when you physically drive by a cell phone tower. And that's how you can also confirm these azimuths and these latitude and longitude and stuff of the tower.
And you cannot testify to the accuracy of these actual CDR records you received. You're just relying on that data.
I rely on the data that T-Mobile provided, yeah.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ross. I don't have any other questions.
All right, you can step down. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Is she released from her subpoena?
She is not, but she can leave the
She is not, but she can leave the courthouse?
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. Has he shrunk during the trial and she gotten bigger, or have they always been this mismatched? How tall is he? He looks like he's 5'3" here. And she looks like she's 6'4".
All right, thank you. All right, we will go ahead and take our lunch break at this time. It's 5 till 12. I will see you back here at 1:15. Same admonitions you always get, and enjoy your lunch. All rise.
All right.
A and D. A
I-
and D A.
This is where they're going through the court or the jury instructions. We're going to skip that because, well, I'm the conductress and I say we're skipping it. All right.
All right.
No. All right, this will be the firearms expert. Now, I do want to say that firearms expertise has been questioned in multiple Supreme Courts or state Supreme Courts. Ballistics is not what we were told on, CSI or FBI files. It is more of a we can include it or not include it kind of thing. So that's what I want to say. Now, Nick Starro would say bullshit because that's how he feels about ballistics. Also, Ian Runkle, our resident legal elf, says that too. So take it with a grain of salt. But they have decided to bring a force multiplierologist in.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
If you would please introduce yourself and spell your name for us.
My name is Jennifer Michelon, Jennifer, Michelon, Michelon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Tell the jury, where do you work?
I work for the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office in the Firearms Section of the Forensic Service Bureau.
How long have you worked with HASO in the firearms section?
I've worked there for 2 years.
What's your title?
I'm a Forensic Laboratory Firearms Analyst.
I'm writing that down so I don't get it wrong. Forensic Laboratory Firearms Analyst. What does a forensic laboratory firearms analyst do?
My main duties are to determine whether or not ammunition components, such as a fired bullet or a fired cartridge case, were fired in the same firearm or from a specific firearm, firearm function and safety testing, serial number restoration, and database entry.
Before you started at HASO, did you work elsewhere also with firearms?
Yes, I did.
Where did you work?
I worked for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in the Firearms Section of the Tampa Crime Lab.
What was your title when you worked for the Florida Department of Law Enforcement? You also call it FDLE in the firearms department.
My title when I left was Senior Crime Laboratory Analyst.
What did you do at Florida Department of Law Enforcement as a senior crime laboratory analyst?
I did the same thing that I'm doing at Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office.
So let's go back to your education and your background in firearms. Tell the jury what your training and your education background is in firearms.
I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry from the University of South Florida, and I completed an 18-month structured training program at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement in the field of firearms identification.
What year did you start working at FDLE?
I began working at FDLE in 2006.
Hello, Erica.
When you started working with FDLE in 2006, did you receive specialized training in order to become a crime laboratory analyst?
When I began with FDLE in 2006, I was in a different section. I started in firearms in 2009.
So in 2009 at FDLE, explain to us what training that you underwent in order to be working in the firearms section at FDLE.
The 18-month structured training program that I went through included units in firearms function and safety testing, which included assembly and disassembly of firearms in order to know how they work. I did units in microscopy of bullets, microscopy of cartridge cases, firearms history and development, ammunition history and development. I did units in serial number restoration, distance determination, and I also completed then I completed an oral board, which was essentially 3.5 hours of question after question, making sure I understood everything in the firearms section. During that time, I also completed I had to do competency tests and also had to do practicals in order to be able to complete my training. After I completed all of that, I did 6 months of supervised casework, which was then culminated with a mock trial of testimony, and then I was released to do supervised casework. I'm not supervised, my own casework.
Do you have to have an official certification in order to be completely done with all of this training to do your own casework?
I received just a completion of the training program from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
When you worked at FDLE in the forensic or the firearms department, approximately how many times did you have an occasion to analyze a firearm?
I did not count how many times I had an opportunity to analyze a firearm, but at this point, it's in the thousands.
When you started at HCSO, approximately how many times since you've joined HCSO have you had an occasion to analyze a firearm?
Hundreds.
Have you testified in court as a firearms expert before?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times?
More than 60.
Your Honor, at this time, I tender the witness as an expert in the area of firearms to...
Any questions? No questions. All right, you can proceed.
Help us understand, we have, during the course of this trial, heard terms such as projectile and casing. Are those things that you analyze in your capacity as a forensic lab firearms analyst at HCSO?
Yes.
Let's start with a projectile. Walk us through, what is a projectile?
A projectile is the portion, it is also called a bullet, that is the part of a cartridge that will go down the barrel of a firearm when it is fired.
What about a casing? What is a casing?
A cartridge case is the Tupperware container of the cartridge itself. It will hold the bullet at the top. The cartridge case holds inside of it the gunpowder, and at the very head stamp or the bottom of the cartridge case, you will see the primer. On the head stamp of that cartridge case is usually the brand and the caliber.
So a projectile, is that word synonymous with or the same as a bullet in layman's terms?
Yes.
You refer to the cartridge casing. We've heard the term casing. Are those two words or terms synonymous, the same thing?
Yes, I call it a cartridge case. I will hear the word casing.
Now, when you are analyzing a firearm, what is the purpose of analyzing a firearm?
When I'm looking at a firearm, I'm looking at it to see that all of the safeties are working, that there's no damage to the firearm. I want to make sure it's safe for me to fire when the time comes. Then the next step would be to test fire that firearm and obtain those test fires in order to look at those test fires to do any comparisons to any evidence of cartridge cases or bullets that I might receive.
When you receive a firearm
And here's the problem with, ballistic analyzation. The human mind is trained to find patterns, even when there are not. We tend to find patterns. That's how we survive in this world. You look at patterns and, our ancestors, the people before us, looked at patterns and were like, oh, it's going to rain. Maybe we need shelter. Oh, if I rub sticks together, it makes fire. Great. So that's how we learn. Now, the problem is when you have side-by-side comparisons, the brain wants to make patterns. They want to match things even when maybe they don't. So if we had a computer matching, I would feel much more comfortable because the human mind wants to find patterns. It's why when you look at an outlet plug, you can almost see a face. We are just structured that way. And it is a subjective science.
you are requested to test a
I do
firearm,
believe it counts as two
when you test
views.
fires, is that the process of making sure the firearm is functional?
Yes.
During your inspection of the safeties that you described, is that also a part of your analysis of whether or not a firearm was actually functional?
Yes.
When you analyze a firearm to see if the safeties are working or whether or not it's functional, do you ever receive projectiles or cartridge casings as well?
Yes.
What are you an expert at doing when you have a projectile, casings, and a firearm as a forensic lab firearms analyst?
I am tasked to determine whether or not those bullets or cartridge cases were fired in or from that firearm.
I want to talk about that process in detail. When you are tasked with analyzing whether or not a cartridge casing came from a specific firearm, walk us through the process. How is that done?
Once I've test fired the firearm, I'm going to bring those test fires back, and I'm going to then look at the class characteristics that are on those cartridge cases. I'm going to document them on the firearm worksheet, and then I'm going to take out each of the evidence cartridge cases that I receive, and I'm going to document each one of those. I'm going to look to see what the class characteristics are on that particular cartridge case. So a class characteristic is something that's predetermined by the manufacturer, and it could be typical of other guns, not just that particular gun. An example would be the shape of the firing pin, the shape of the firing pin aperture, that's the hole that the firing pin sticks out of, and what type of marks I see on that cartridge case. In order for me to do that, I use a comparison microscope, which allows me to see two things at the same time at the same magnification. Now, if those class characteristics on the cartridge cases are the same class characteristics that I see on the firearm, I can then begin another part of the examination, which is called looking for the individual characteristics or the pattern of individual characteristics. The pattern of individual characteristics is unique to that firearm, and it's caused by the manufacturing process itself, and it also can come from the use, abuse, erosion, corrosion of the firearm. So when I'm looking, I want to see if those individual characteristics that I see on the cartridge case.
All right. Everyone's voice in this trial at this point right now is annoying. I don't know why I really don't like the female lawyer on the state side, her voice right now, but I did want to give you an update. In case you didn't know, Gene Hackman's daughter does suspect that he, his wife, and the dog might have passed away from carbon monoxide poisoning. So that's the latest news. And Epstein has not, the Epstein list has not dropped yet. Also, if you were very big into the Micah Miller case, the husband in that case has been alleged to have violated a 15-year-old girl and using the church as a sexual playground in a lawsuit. So looks like there is more trouble ahead for him, even if his wife's death was ruled a self-delete. And a sad one. Yes, Eris, the news today was that Gene Hackman, his wife, and the dog were found dead on his property. So they are looking at a possible carbon monoxide. They should be able to tell by the skin. Carbon monoxide decedents generally have what's called cherry blossom skin. So there'll be patches of very stark white and then red. I don't know why. I'm not a doctorologist, and I shouldn't know this, but I watch way too much true crime. Now take everything I say today with 1.5 pounds of salt, because it is not a great leg day. He was in his 90s, and honest to goodness, carbon monoxide, don't you just basically fall asleep? I mean, you get a little weirded out and then you fall asleep. And I say this as someone who's watched my mother-in-law struggle with the loss of her husband who was with her for, so many years. To go at the same time with your husband, the one you love, and not have to have someone left behind. I mean, if that was a way to go, I would do it. Allegedly in Minecraft and not for a bajillion and 12 years. And possibly when my brain is in a jar like Futurama.
Are the same individual characteristics that are on the test fire or the other cartridge cases that I've received.
That was a lot of information. Let's go back. Class characteristics. When you are test firing a firearm, and for instance, looking at the casing that comes out during the test fire, help us understand how do those class characteristics get there?
So when the firearm is fired, the cartridge case, the first thing that's going to happen is the firing pin is going to strike that primer, and it's going to leave an impression of the shape of that firing pin on the primer of the cartridge case.
If I can stop you right there, I apologize. You've used the term firing pin and primer.
Yes.
What are those, and where are they located within a firearm?
The firing pin is located inside the slide, in the center of the slide, back portion of it, in the firearm. It's the portion that will be released forward when you are ready to fire the firearm. And a primer is that circle that you see on the back of a cartridge case, and that is where the spark comes from on the cartridge.
Okay, so the firing pin and the primer, you were explaining the process of how those class characteristics get on the actual casing that is expelled. Please continue, I'm sorry.
So the firing pin will make an impression onto that primer, which will then cause an explosion. The spark that comes from the primer will ignite the gunpowder that's inside the cartridge, which in turn will make the bullet go down the barrel, but it will also force that cartridge case back against the back portion of the slide, and it will also leave marks in the on the back or the primer of that cartridge case. At that point, then the cartridge case gets expelled from the firearm.
Now, what about individual characteristics? You said the individual characteristics that are left on a cartridge casing differ. They're not the same.
From firearm to firearm.
Okay, so let's talk about a projectile, for instance. What happens to a projectile as it's going through to be ejected or fired from a firearm?
When the cartridge is ignited and the bullet goes down the barrel, the bullet will travel down the barrel and it will get class characteristics from inside the barrel, which are the rifling inside the barrel, which are those spiral grooves that you see within the interior of the barrel. Those will be imparted onto the bullet. That's a class characteristic. Multiple firearms may have the same class characteristics. At that same time, it's also getting individual characteristics imparted onto it.
Those impressions or class characteristics and individual characteristics, is that what allows you to analyze a test fire to a projectile that's already been fired to see whether or not they match?
Yes.
Before you kind of started to describe using a microscope to compare the two, the test fire that happens in a controlled environment and the one that's actually external. Help us understand how you do that.
The first thing I do is I want to make sure each of those items has individual characteristics. I can't continue my examination if it does not have any individual characteristics. If it does have individual characteristics, I can compare the item of evidence to a test fire or to other items of evidence.
In this case, tell the jury, so what happens next?
If I see repeating patterns of individual characteristics on the item, then I can make identifications.
And again, you're looking at these class characteristics and individual characteristics on a test fire and a projectile provided to you under a microscope, correct?
Correct.
Now, tell us about the test firing process. When you receive a firearm and you're requested to test fire it, where do you do that?
I test fire it into the section water tank.
What does the water tank look like?
The water tank is essentially a big steel box that has a port on one end, and you'll fire the firearm into that port.
Is it just like a big open area that you aim at and fire in, or is it a defined area?
There is a small port at the front of the tank. The tank is filled with water. I aim the firearm into that port, and then the bullets will be collected from the water.
How many times do you think in your career as a firearms analyst have you done this process of firing a firearm into this water tank with this port at the front?
I haven't counted, but I would assume at this point in the thousands.
When you're test firing firearms, are they all of the same type or are they different types?
As far as the cartridge,
No, of the firearms that you're asked to fire.
I have test fired many different firearms.
Have you test fired a Glock 43 as the same as the one that was involved in this case and provided to you?
43 or 42?
42.
Yes, I have.
And for reference, I'll show you what's been entered into evidence as State Exhibit 16. I'm going to place it in front of you.
Wait.
You provided State Exhibit, was it 16? 16 to test fire.
May I take the box?
We have a Funko Pop protector case for the force multiplier or an aquarium. I know it's a shadow box display case, but this is flippin' amazing. This case has been alternatingly heartbreaking and alternately just what the Walmart rapture am I watching? And we are watching one of those moments. Also, let's see, Law and Crime and Chat is, Chat is thinking he is, let's look at the poll. 88% say he's guilty, 6% say not guilty, and 7% say there will be a hung jury, and that is with 2,152 votes. So there you go. I haven't seen The Closer. I have so many shows I need to watch, but then I get sucked into the nostalgia and comfort of knowing what's going to happen in my old shows. So I don't want to give a new show a chance.
Yes, it was.
How do you know?
I could see the case number, the exhibit number, and my initials in my handwriting on the firearm and the magazine.
Each firearm that you receive for testing, does it get an individual case number associated with it that you just explained is representative on this firearm?
It gets an individual property item number or exhibit number, and it will have a case number, and then I will write those things on the firearm or...
The same people that think that MI3, the Navy SEALs, the CIA, the FBI all got together to frame O.J. Simpson. That would be the people that think they're not guilty. Also, the people that like recorders, and not like recorders for, digital ones. No, those plastic audio assault weapons, those recorders. Those are the people that think that. And that's why we should remove warning labels. When I'm president, no warning labels. If you don't know that a Hot Pocket is basically lava on the inside, it's a learning thing. If you don't know not to put a fork in a, toaster, okay, we'll put a warning on that one because maybe your mom didn't tell you. But honestly, I think we need to do that. Anywho, I'm going to get going on this one.
The date and my initials on them. In this case, I wrote all of that myself.
When you receive a firearm, I heard you talk about some of your training includes the assembly and disassembly of the firearm when deciding whether or not a firearm is operable. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you do that in this case? Is that a part of your evaluation when you receive a firearm, is assembling and disassembling, disassembling and then assembling the firearm?
I test fired the firearm first, and then I did remove the slide to check the safeties.
Okay, so how many occasions have you had in your career to fire a Glock 42 specifically?
I don't have a specific number. I've fired many Glocks, though.
Do you think over 100 times in your career is safe to say approximately?
Yes.
Now, let's talk about your understanding and your education or background in the brand of Glock. What do you know about the brand of...
Welcome, Squid Raiders. Sorry, I was trying to eat a snack while I was off screen. It never fails. Welcome, Squid Raiders. We are at the ballistics testimony. I believe we have ballistics, and then we have jury instructions, and then they are off for closing statements. And I can't wait for, well, I can wait for her closing statement because it looks like hella long. Looks like she took all of her time. And then we've got closings. I am watching Verdict Watch on another screen, so nothing as of yet. The jury has been deliberating for 2 hours and 13 minutes. Yes, and my filter is off. My filter is off. Warning. It has... Let's just say that Hagatha the Leg has gotten a partner in crime, so I am now dealing with two legs that are about like, listen, about as much as my cats at this point. So, yeah, I have 6 kids. So the oldest is 18 and she will graduate this year. And I have no idea what to do with myself because between you and me and the internet, I am not mature enough to have an adult child, like an official adult child. And then it goes about every 2 years. So 16, 14, 12, then 9, and then 8. So I think I've got all of them. And then 3 girls first, and then I got too cocky and God's like, here's 3 boys, just keep them alive. And my youngest, most feral, may just, may just take me out. He's a, after closing statements, when we get there, I will tell you guys the hand job story. It is infamous. It is from the deep lore of this channel. It is hilarious and redonkulous. And my youngest, most feral is, I hope he uses his power for good.
Glock.
I did take a Glock armorer's course when I began my training at the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and I'm very aware of how the Glock operates.
Tell us how the Glock operates. And I guess while you're explaining that, can you specify how it operates and how it may be different than other brands?
Do you want me to start of how to essentially fire the Glock?
Sure.
In order to test fire or to fire a Glock, the first thing you need to do is to load ammunition into the magazine. That's the container that holds the cartridges.
How is that different? Why are we treating these people like they've never seen a force multiplier in their entire lives? Let's give them some credit for knowing a couple of things. Now, if you had shown them and had a little PowerPoint, this would have been awesome. Or you could have had one of those dummy Hollywood, actually make sure your armor isn't, Hannah Gutierrez Reed. Then bring a dummy, force multiplier and show them that way. Explain that it is a semi-automatic and not a, revolver. Explain how that's different. Then don't talk about the revolver anymore because you don't need it. Well, to top it all off, we were happy at 5. I wanted my son to have a little brother, so it was good that my middle son was a boy, because this poor boy knew more about My Little Ponies than he should. He was always roped in to play Barbie dolls, or his sisters were always dressing him up. He didn't have a chance, so I wanted him to have a brother. Now, according to my oldest son, he didn't need any more siblings. He was fine. Thank you. Now, we thought we were good with 5, and my husband was going to get his vasectomy consult. And 2 days before that, I was feeling off, and I got a very, 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 very faint positive on an internet cheapy pregnancy test. Now, I tried to send a picture to my friend because I was freaking out. Because no and no. Anyways, my husband texts me and then calls me right back saying, "What the F is this?" And I was like, "Look, I was trying not to freak you out. I forgot you're CC'd in on my, text messages because our phones are all weird and inbred." Anywho, so he brings home a test from his work. And we take it, and it's positive, and he still gets the vasectomy, though, because, well, we know we can't be anywhere near each other, apparently. But, that's what it is. True. I can't wait to be a grandma. AT1CVB41. I'm probably going to mess that up today. Fair warning, I'm probably just going to call you AT. But there you go. So youngest, most feral started life basically giving Mr. Mo hives. He broke out in hives. I feel so bad. And you guys, oh my God. Okay, we are full tangent right now because both of their voices are annoying to me today. We are full tangent right now. So anyways, now I'm going to go ahead and tell you that pregnant women should not be allowed to give their husbands, any sort of fashion advice. And I decided that Mr. Mo would look all smexy with his head shaved. Now, had Mr. Mo had a smooth head, this would have been a beautiful concept. Tall, nerdy, little bit buff, little bit dad bod, and bald with a mustache. Well, what my husband looked like, looking back at the pictures, was like he was Make-A-Wish Foundation and shouldn't have been near schools. That being said, I made him do that during child 5, and I still had child 6 with him, so I do apologize to him. And he wants to burn all those pictures. I still contend I still found him smexy enough to make feral child number 6, so I really don't see what he's complaining about. Anywho, I'm sure he's glad I told that story on the internet.
So that you can fire one right after the other. The next thing you're going to need to do is take that top portion of the firearm, and you're going to have to pull the slide back and release it. I'm sorry, after you've inserted the magazine into the mag well. Then you're going to take that slide back and release it. The first cartridge in that magazine will now be inserted into the chamber of the firearm, and the firearm is ready to fire. When you released that slide at the top of the firearm, at that same time, the firing pin has been slightly cocked in the firearm. That means it's been pulled back ever so slightly. Now the firearm is ready to fire. When I pull the trigger, I have to depress the trigger itself, and there's also a trigger safety on this particular firearm. I have to depress this trigger safety and the trigger at the same time in order for that firearm to fire. When I pull that trigger, the firearm will fire, the bullet will go down the barrel, the slide will move back, and the cartridge case will be extracted and ejected from the firearm. At the same time, the slide will now start moving back forward. It will take the next cartridge out of the magazine, and it will load it into the chamber. And it will have now repeated the process that happened again.
On the Glock brand specifically, help us understand the safety precautions that are present on Glock firearms.
The Glock has the trigger safety, which is located on the trigger. It's in the center. It kind of protrudes a little bit from the trigger itself. It's right down the middle. You have to depress it in order for the trigger to be pulled back. The Glock also has a firing pin block safety, which in order for that firing pin block to get out of the way of the firing pin, you have to pull the trigger. And again, in order to pull the trigger, you have to depress the trigger safety. This firearm also has what is known as a drop safety. All that particular thing is doing is it's holding back that firing pin, and then it will pull it back a little bit more and then drop out of the way. And the firearm will not fire unless that has dropped out of the way.
So for instance, with this firing pin block safety,
Denise, my nephew and niece had difficulty getting pregnant with 1 and 2, and they were told during the procedures it would be nearly impossible to get pregnant without meds. Oops, baby 3 was discovered. Yes. It is more tolerable. It's just in that higher pitch that I find sometimes women seem to adopt because it makes us sound a little more princessy, a little more compliant, a little less aggressive. But I'm not here for pretending I'm anyone but that I'm not. So I don't like that fake affect that some women do put on to kind of soften or not seem so aggressive. I mean, you're a lawyer. I say just own it. Be aggressive. You know, have a pleasant voice, but you don't have to Disney princess it.
does that help prevent things like accidental shootings?
The firing pin block safety will not allow the firing
I
pin to
believe
go
that
forward
might be true.
unless the trigger has been pulled.
The trigger safety.
For most, there
you've
are some.
described as a small object on the middle of the trigger. If the trigger safety is depressed,
This man trips me out. Okay, follow me with this, you guys. Here, up, 8 years old. Here, down, 18. But it's only when his beard starts, like everything else. And the fact that he's slumping in his chair, he looks defeated. I mean, I think the jury is taking their time, but honestly, it's insane. The juxtaposition, and I'm sure he was, big man on, acting like a big man. Allegedly, this is my speculation as always, but, acting so big and bad when he was in the home and doing what he did. Allegedly, not adjudicatedly, for now.
but not the entire trigger behind it, will a Glock 42 fire?
If just the safety has been depressed, no, it will not fire. You have to finish pulling the trigger.
Help us understand the difference of the terms semi-automatic firearm and automatic firearm, excuse me.
A semi-automatic firearm requires a pull of the trigger for every shot that is fired.
Automatic firearm is what morons who've never researched firearms call normal guns. Normal firearms that you see every day on the street are semi-automatic because they do automatically pull a new freedom seat up, but they are not fully, kind of thing. This has been your Force Multiplier Talk.
A fully automatic firearm, all you have to do is depress the trigger, and as long as there's ammunition in the magazine and you're still depressing that trigger, it will continue to fire.
The Glock 42 that we see in Space 16 that's sitting on the ledge in front of you, is that a semi-automatic firearm or is that an automatic firearm?
It's a semi-automatic firearm.
Does that mean in order for the firearm to be fired multiple times, you would have to both depress the trigger safety and the trigger in its entirety multiple times? in
I am
order
not
to fire?
sure.
Correct.
Or at least they didn't
Asked in another
have find
way,
anything like
Does
that.
it require you to completely pull and then release it before pulling it again to continue firing it?
You will pull, and then you have to release pressure. It doesn't mean your finger's still not there. It may be putting little pressure, but it does have to be fully extended again in order for you to pull again.
If a Glock 42 with these safety features, which you've described on the Glock 42 in front of you, were to, for instance, be dropped, would it be able to go off?
With the firing pin block safety, it would not go off.
I want to talk about the process of test firing again. You described to us the water tank that you fire into. Using your hands, can you raise your hands up and show the jury exactly how big is that, I forget what you called it, oh, the port that you fire into?
It's approximately 6 inches wide.
Approximately 6 inches wide. And is that standard for you? You've done that in every case where you fired firearms into this water tank?
Not every firearm will get fired into the water tank, but most do.
Okay, so when you test fired this firearm into a water tank that had a 6-inch wide port, how many hands did it require you to use on the firearm to point and aim it correctly in the hole?
I used to.
Overruled.
You can answer it.
I used.
So I see where she's going with this. Again, we were looking at a fairly tight grouping. This represents on where this little girl was shot. Again, this is a fairly tight grouping if you are claiming this is an accident and you don't know how this happened. So what they're trying to point out is that you have to intend to get this grouping as close as you got. This is not like, oops, 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 oops. This is not True Lies where the force multiplier goes down the stairs and Jamie Lee Curtis looks super hot. This is the real world. And unfortunately, as sad as it is, it seems like this father took, allegedly, again, in my speculative mind, took out his kids because he was mad at his wife and wanted to hurt her beyond words. In my opinion. Have I clarified enough for law and crime who gets mad when, law tubers speculate? Have I done that enough? Because honestly, they can, as the Prancer-sized lady says, well, they can kiss my grits.
Use 2 hands.
Why did you use 2 hands?
I want to make sure I'm holding the firearm firmly so it will cycle properly.
We sometimes hear in conjunction with firearms terms such as recoil. What is recoil?
Recoil is the amount of force that's going to come back at you after you have test fired a firearm or fired a firearm. It causes a little bit of force into your hand.
A Glock 42, or I guess maybe even the Glock brand in general, what is the recoil based on your training and your experience firing Glocks? What is the recoil like in firearms?
Depends on the firearm. For Glock, I do have some recoil when I'm firing the firearm. It's not the same as.
This is entirely subjective, though. I mean, it's apples to oranges here. She's a woman who has knowledge of force multipliers, so knows that there's going to be recoil. We're trying to... This question, I get where it's going, but I also think that this is such a subjective thing, and I'm wondering if... why the defense isn't saying subjective, like this is not relevant. I get where they're going with this. I think it's subjective is all. Kind of lost my train of thought, got back on and found it again. I love my mind.
Other firearms.
Does the recoil depend on the caliber and type of firearm?
It can.
So when you're holding a firearm and you're firing, for instance, into your water tank or you're trying to aim, how do you combat the recoil that you would experience of the firearm after, or as it's fired, excuse me?
I am using two hands when I test fire, and then I just wait in between shots to make sure I can aim and make sure I am aimed properly into the port.
May I have just a moment, Judge?
Yes?
In this case, were you provided shell casings and projectiles in order to do a comparison after you test fired the firearm?
Yes.
Tell us about that process.
I received bullets and cartridge cases in this case, and I obtained them from the evidence section, and then I brought them back in order to compare them to my test fires of this firearm.
How many test fires did you have when you test fired this firearm?
I test fired this firearm twice.
How many do you use how many of the test fires do you use when you're placing it on the microscope and you're looking at it in comparison to the ones that you're provided from the scene?
I used one bullet, one cartridge case.
Is that standard?
You could use multiple test fires if needed, or multiple bullets or cartridge cases. It depends on the scenario.
Did you need to do that in this case?
In this particular case, I did.
So the analyst decides whether they need multiple, and they'll fire enough until they get one that they think matches. I don't know. This sounds kind of shady. Again, I have been influenced by the wise minds of both Runkle of the Bailey, our resident elf master of lore and ballistics, and Nicholas Starro. So I will say it is a very subjective science, and ballistics evidence has been taken up to the Supreme Court in several states to make it so that analysts have to say that a bullet can be included or, or excluded, but they should not be able to present that this is an exact match because it is a subjective science.
Did not.
Why?
They were well marked.
Okay, so you test fire it, you have a test casing and a test projectile. How many projectiles did you receive either from the scene or from the deceased?
I received 3 fired bullets and 1 fired bullet core.
Did you compare those bullets to your test fire?
I compared the fired bullets to each other and to the test fire.
What's the purpose of comparing the fired bullets to each other?
I had originally, when I was going through to see the individual characteristics, I noticed that they all had the same individual characteristics, and I could see marks that looked similar on each of them as I put each one up individually, and then I put them up together to just index them or mark them to see those patterns were the same at that point.
After you compared the test fires to each other, did you choose one and compare it to each projectile or bullet that you were provided in this case?
In this particular case, I compared the bullets to each other first, and I took one of them and I compared it to a test fire.
Why do you compare the bullets provided to you from the scene or the deceased to each other first?
In this particular case, there was no reason why I did that over looking at them to the test fire. It's just I had seen the pattern when I was looking at them individually, so I marked them at the time.
What is your expert opinion about the projectiles that you were provided associated with this case that you received from either the scene or the deceased?
I identified them to the firearm.
Are you talking the firearm in front of you, State's Exhibit 16?
Yes.
Does that mean that the projectiles that you were provided and used during your analysis came from State's Exhibit 16, the Glock 42 that's in front of you?
Yes.
What about the cartridge casings? Were you provided cartridge casings and asked to compare them in this case?
Yes.
How did you do that?
I took those cartridge cases, I looked at them each individually and made sure they had individual characteristics, and then I compared them. In this particular instance, I compared each cartridge case to a test fire.
When you compared each cartridge case that was found at the scene of this event to the test fire, tell the jury what your results were.
I determined that they were identified to the firearm here in front of me.
Does that mean that those cartridge casings were expelled from the firearm that's sitting in front of you?
Yes.
Judge, may I have just a moment?
Yes?
I don't have any further questions. I will take just one moment to return.
Cross?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Now, you were involved in doing some analysis in this case, and then later on, you were asked to do some additional analysis more recently.
That is correct.
And that was based on the retirement of one of the FDLE examiners that was involved in the case, Mr. Kwong.
That's what I'm assuming, yes.
Okay. But you had originally done some test fires in the case and did an examination of the firearm.
That is correct.
Well-
So then later, when you were
KLF.
asked to continue to review the case or review the rest of the evidence, you were able to use those original test fires that you used in this case.
That is correct.
And you were able to identify those casings to each other and to the firearm in this case.
In this particular case, I ID'd each cartridge case back to a test fire.
Okay, and that test fire was from this firearm that you were shown a minute ago.
Yes,
When you looked at the ammunition, there was two types of ammunition, right, from the casings?
correct.
And what were the types of ammunition?
There were two types, Hornady and Norma.
Okay, and both of those are obviously 380.
Correct.
Huh. So the defense made a big deal of Norma ammo being used because the Norma box of ammo was found in this, looks like a woman's purse. It does look like maybe Shirley is also a concealed carry person and had all the paraphernalia in her purse, and this was her force multiplier. I am not sure. It looks like there were other force multipliers or at least accessories in the home. Yeah, she definitely needed demonstratives. There, for people like me who I will write down what they say, but it's so much easier to understand if I have a visual while they're talking, because I am an auditory learner, but with the visual, auditory visual. So there we go. That's what it is.
Now, Ms. Reeder was asking you about the safety features on the Glock, on the firearm in this case, and you said that there's the trigger and the trigger safety, and then there's the firing pin block safety, correct?
There's the trigger safety, the firing pin block safety, and the drop safety.
Okay, and all of those, as you pull back the trigger, will go along and allow you to fire the gun.
That is correct.
It's not something that you have to do separately. It all kind of goes together as you pull the trigger.
Correct. As you're depressing the trigger along with that trigger safety, and you pull the trigger all the way back, it will disengage the firing pin block safety, allowing that firing pin to flow through the channel.
Adults could fire this firearm, correct?
I would assume so.
Okay, and children could fire this type of firearm.
I can't determine whether or not anybody particularly could fire a firearm, but is it possible?
I really, really, and truly from the bottom of my soul, hate this implication that this young boy was the one that was firing this. My reasoning is, if he found this, if he did one shot and it went into his sister, he would not continue. Why would he continue? Why would he continue playing with this? It doesn't make sense. Could it happen? Sure, in some universe, should string theory prove right, some alternate universe, this happened that way. But in this universe, it doesn't make sense. At least to me, I'm a mom of 6 kids. I don't know this little boy. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but this is my speculation. So I don't see that happening. Well, Erica Thorpe, while they haven't explicitly said it, the defense has been planting seeds that someone else within the home had the force multiplier. They first started on Shirley when the DNA evidence, I think, was fairly piss poor and fairly inconclusive that Shirley was, involved. They did switch over to the son, JJ, and they have been, again, it's very subtle, but implying that he has a greater mix on of DNA on both the grip and the trigger, and I believe the end of the force multiplier. So it hasn't been explicit. It hasn't been, said out loud, but there are these little drops that do indicate to me that they are attempting to sow in doubt and possibly not saying it out loud. Again, this is not saying this out loud. Implicate JJ. Or at least sow the seeds of doubt that it could have happened another way and he is protecting his son. It's subtle-ish.
Well, yes.
Okay. And in fact, you're able to test for trigger pull. Is that correct?
I do have a way of measuring trigger pull, yes.
But in this case, you did not do that.
No,
And that would tell you the force needed to pull the trigger with this particular firearm.
that is correct.
When you did do the test fires, you didn't find anything unique about this firearm versus any other kind of Glock that you've used before.
The trigger pull didn't seem any different than any other Glock that I've fired.
And typically, you've stated that the trigger pull for a firearm is about like opening a can of soda.
Correct.
Nothing further.
Anything else?
Okay.
All right, you can step down, ma'am, thank you. She released from her subpoena?
Yes, Judge.
All right, free to go. She's released, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Call your next witness.
Judge, we have a stipulation that we don't support street.
All right. All right, so the parties have stipulated to an additional fact. The state of Florida and the defendant Jermaine Bass stipulate to the following. The person who died on the 29th day of August 2022 has been identified as Jayla Bass, the individual named in counts 1 and 2 of the indictment in this cause. We're hereby certify the foregoing stipulation is made in good faith for the reasons alleged here and dated the 26th day of February 2025, signed by Mr. Terry, Ms. Schlemmer, and the defendant, Mr. Bass. And it's commonly called the stipulation as to identity, and that the parties are not contesting the identity of the individual that died and the autopsy was performed upon in this case. There you go. All right,
Your Honor, this time state rests.
the state rests. All right, we will take a recess at this time. All rise.
Oh. Well, you said a small break.
Judge, at this point, the defense, we renew all previous motions and objections, specifically our motion to suppress Mr. Bass's statements that were made to law enforcement prior to being read Miranda. We'll move for a judgment of acquittal as to the entire indictment and specifically draw the court's attention to the issue of premeditation and the premeditated murder. I provided the court in the state 2 cases.
Yeah, she's like, my client did nothing. They proved nothing. Well, go ahead and try it. I know you have to for appeal, but I mean, A for effort, you know, but D for denied and, you know, F for F him.
Is Bertram, Burtram, v. State, and that's found at 780 Southern 2nd, 224. That's a 2nd District of Appeal case. And Tillman, Tillman v. State, and that is at 842 Southern 2nd, 922. Both talk about the standard related to premeditation. While premeditation may be proven by circumstantial evidence, the evidence relied upon by the state must be inconsistent with every other reasonable inference. Where the state's proof fails to exclude a reasonable hypothesis that the homicide occurred other than by premeditated design, a verdict of first-degree murder cannot be sustained. Related to the events in this case, there's been really no testimony put forward as to any kind of marital discord or any issues between Mr. Bass and either of his children prior to August 29th, 2022. The only evidence, frankly, about what happened at that scene comes from crime scene, the ballistics, DNA, and the brief statement made by my client to law enforcement saying that he was cleaning the gun and the gun went off. There are some additional statements from Shirley
Wait.
Bass.
So you're discounting crime scenes? Like crime scene analysis as a whole? We can just ignore it? Like the only evidence comes from like the blood spatter and the bullets in the wall and like the mattresses and the, you know, autopsy. But honestly, where is the evidence? Do we have any? I mean, he just made a spontaneous utterance that he done it. But really, do we have any evidence? No, it didn't. So the reason I put hung jury is because 7% of people on law and crime think it's going to be a hung jury. Now, I believe those are the 7 people that were exposed to, I'm going to say gamma radiation from 3 Mile Island, but most people believe guilty. And Aya, have a good night. And take care. Hope to see you again. So that's why it's on my poll. I just thought, who in the hell thinks that this is going to be a hung jury? Like, who's going to be the one person that's like, no, he's innocent? It was the child. I know it. Who is going to be that person?
On the 911 call, also talking briefly about the gun being cleaned, and at one point even saying that her son was supposed to be awake and he was running. There's been no testimony as to any kind of issues going on that would cause Mr. Bass to injure or kill or attempt to kill his children in this case. There's been no testimony as to when he became armed. There's no eyewitness testimony from any other witnesses about what happened inside of that room. We're just relying on those 2 brief statements. The evidence in the case also shows that not only was my client's DNA on the firearm, but his son's DNA was on the trigger and grip as well. And based on all of those issues, as well as the testimony that's been put forward, we would move for a judgment of acquittal as to all counts.
Mr. Terry?
Your Honor, both these cases are very distinguishable from our situation at hand. We had Bertram's case is a one shot, but I think both of these are just one shots. Here we have 5 shots directed at the victims, at least 4 we know of for sure, into the victim's head. 3 of them into Jayla Bass's head were all centrally located to the head. It's clear evidence of premeditation, the number of shots, the location of the shots, the fact that these children were helpless and defenseless laying in their bed. And the defendant admitted to being the person who shot and gave an excuse as to it being an accident. However, I believe the state has put forth evidence that this could not have occurred as an accident. And with the defendant acknowledging that we do not have to prove motive in this case. And I think just the manner of the shots and the defendant's obvious lie is basis enough to argue premeditation.
Anything else from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right, the motion for judgment of acquittal is denied. All right, what says the defense as to witnesses? Pardon?
May I have more?
Of course.
Discussing that.
Yep.
No one believes us. Maybe we should sit the hell down. I know we can win. Just let me talk. I'll get them to learn. I will. I know they're stupid and I talk to them like they're dumb, but I can totally get them to win. Put me in, coach. Look, I don't want to scare you, but you're screwed, dude. More minutes. We've given you some minutes. And minutes. Okay, they're going through the colloquy with him. He is not going to be testifying. Why is it not giving sound?
And then make sure you look at the verdict form.
Okay, so basically, the defense is going to rest.
The state having rested what says the defense?
The defense at this time will rest, Your Honor.
All right, so both the state and the defense have rested their cases. As I warned you, now is my opportunity to instruct you on the law.
Okay, we are going to skip past jury instructions because as conductress of the Petty Express, I'm skipping past jury instructions. Okay, so our first closing argument is the Assistant State Attorney, Jessica Reeder. Today she has adopted a more penny problem glasses blondie attitude or vocal tone, which is bothering me. Hopefully we can, course correct from that, but let's see. It might also be that she is at 1.25, but that's how we roll. I do try to let people know when when I'm having a full F deficit day. I mean, I do try to warn people that everything is irritating me. But fair enough. True point.
Members of the jury, we end right where we began. It was an accidental discharge. I was trying to take the magazine out and it went off. They was both in bed. I was in their room. Those were the statements of the defendant, Jermaine Bass Jr. Mere minutes after he murdered his daughter while she was laying in the top bunk of her bed. Those were his statements as he was holding his son, who was profusely bleeding from a gunshot wound to the side of his head that he caused. It was an accident. I was loading the magazine. I was in their room. Those statements you heard on the body-worn camera of Adam Lawman, HGSO deputy who first responded. I want to draw your attention on that same body-worn camera to the timestamp of 22:46:20, right after he made these statements. The defendant was asked, what happened upstairs? He looked straight at the deputies and he said, nothing happened upstairs. That man uttered those words, nothing happened upstairs, when he knew that his daughter was on that top bunk with a gunshot wound.
Yes, preach, preach, get mad. This pissed me off too. Thank you, ma'am. Get that register down. I love it. And oh, don't you cut your eyes at her, young man. Don't make me have to get you a willow stick. You're going to go pick your own willow stick. That's just what's going to happen. Don't make me get my, wooden spoon. Oof. Oh, that look just... Oh, look, if y'all are moms or dads or have ever been with children, this look, this disrespect right here will just... Okay, we're going to take that off the screen before he gets like 57,420, flip-flops just chonked at his head. Allegedly in Minecraft, you do not mess with, mamas.
To the middle of her forehead, and she was bleeding out, and she was about to die. He said nothing happened upstairs. He didn't beg them to go save her. He didn't beg them to help her. He said nothing happened upstairs. We end right where we began. Right where we began. Where defense counsel in their opening statement to you said, my client did not shoot Joe Bass or JJ. We know that's not true. We know he did. We know the forensic evidence points to him. And I want you to recall when our blood spatter expert was on the stand. She said to you, the scene will guide you to collect the evidence that is relevant so that you can piece together what happened. And members of the jury, that's exactly what happened throughout the duration of this trial. The testimony and evidence are pieces that, when laid together, form an arrow that point to the guilt of only one person in this case. The defendant murdered his 5-year-old daughter as she was sleeping, and he tried to murder his 8-year-old son, JJ. Remember this last Friday during jury selection, you were taught that the state has the burden to prove the elements of the crimes charged beyond a reasonable doubt. The judge explained that to you, and in fact, she just read it in this video. It helps to know what the elements are, what we're focusing on as we go through discussing how and why we know the defendant is guilty of each element of each crime charged in this case. We'll go one by one. First degree premeditated murder. To prove the crime of first-degree premeditated murder, the state must prove the following three elements beyond a reasonable doubt. Jayla Bass is dead. Number two, the death was caused by the criminal act of Jermaine Lavonda Bass. And number three, there was a premeditated killing of Jayla Bass. He's also charged with 2 counts of aggravated child abuse. There we talk about number one, Jermaine Lavonda Bass committed aggravated battery upon Jayla Bass or Jermaine Bass. That's counts 2 and 3. Jayla Bass or Jermaine Bass were under the age of 18. We know that. Jermaine Lavonda
Why don't we have a PowerPoint?
Bass actually and intentionally caused bodily harm to Jayla Bass or Jermaine Bass, counts 2 and 3. In doing so, Jermaine Lavonda Bass intentionally or knowingly caused great bodily harm. You know that as well. You saw the gunshot wounds.
His middle name is Lavonda. That might be his new name in prison, allegedly, but not adjudicatedly. And we have verdict clock going on 3 hours. They're waiting for lunch. Allegedly in Minecraft.
The last count he's charged with is count 4, premeditated murder. Jermaine Lavonda Bass intended to commit the crime of first-degree premeditated murder. Number 2, Jermaine Lavonda Bass committed an overt act toward the commission of first-degree premeditated murder that went beyond mere preparation. Number 3, Jermaine Lavonda Bass failed to complete the first-degree premeditated murder. Let's talk about how and why we know the defendant is the one who pulled the trigger. And let's talk about how and why we know that he did it intentionally. We know that
Oh,
the defendant
please have a
started out his night
demonstrative.
by leaving his 5-year-old and his 7-year-old home alone in their beds. We know that's true. 5 and 7, home alone at nighttime. We know that he followed his wife Shirley to her family dinner in the West Shore area at Ruth's Chris restaurant. How do we know that? States Exhibit 21. We can track his cell phone records. He leaves the children home alone by at least 7:15 p.m. We know that's true because of the video surveillance shows him leaving before that time. We know that Shirley got to dinner and that the defendant arrived in the West Shore area where Ruth's Chris is located. And around 10 o'clock, we know that he's calling Shirley and he's leaving by 10:01. We heard testimony from Shirley's niece, who's kind of more like a cousin, they're similar in age, China Gadsden. She explained to
Juries are ephemeral, ridiculous, redonkulous, and sometimes semi-smart logical, but never does one bet on the jury doing anything logical. Never.
you what she saw that night. She saw the defendant in his Nissan truck pull in front of Shirley's car that she was driving, stop, get out, walk up to the vehicle, and confront Shirley for going to a family dinner. You know, he immediately got back in his car and went to his house. That's what States 21 shows. Prove his phone records. We know that's true. Just like Anna Cox said, the evidence will reveal to you what happened. Other evidence that reveals this, in fact, is true, that the defendant followed Shirley to her dinner and confronted her, is the IM crime camera video footage that we see of the defendant's car. We can read between the lines of the evidence we have as to the way the defendant was feeling at the time he arrived back home and went inside where 5-year-old Jayla Bass was sleeping in the top bunk. And 8-year-old Jermaine Bass, JJ, is laying right next to her. Now again, The scene will reveal itself. You only have to follow it. We know that the children were in the bed together. Laying side by side in the bed. I'm putting up states 24A because the forensic evidence tells us. We know that Jayla Bass was laying closest to the wall, her head where this pooling of blood is seen, and that JJ's head was right next to her, either touching the mattress or slightly above it. At the point in time that the firearm was pointed at their heads and the trigger was pulled. Remember last Friday when we discussed premeditation, Mr. Terry was talking to you about there's no specific time frame when you're trying to decide whether or not an act was premeditated. It can happen in an instant. Recall that today, Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office firearm expert Jennifer Michaelon took the stand and explained to you what would have to take place in order for that Glock 42 to fire. She explained you first have to take the magazine. You have to load it with bullets. You have to put that filled magazine inside the bottom well of the firearm. You then have to slide the top of the firearm back in order for it to fire. Then, like she explained, when she's firing these firearms regularly during the course of her investigations as a firearm expert, she uses two guns to be able to safely and precisely point and aim within a 6-inch area. Loading the magazine with bullets, putting the magazine inside of the firearm, sliding the top back to make it ready. And then she further explained, not only do you have to point it and aim it, each time you pull the trigger, you have to pull it hard enough to first compress the trigger pull, safety, and then the trigger itself. And she explained to you that because it is not an automatic firearm, that each time you pull the trigger, you have to pull it and let it go, and 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 pull it and let it go. And members of the jury, that evidence is the scene itself, the evidence revealing to you what premeditation is. All of those steps is the scene revealing to you through evidence what premeditation is. Look at the bullet holes. On these precious children's face. Look at them.
Objection, Your Honor, improper
Sustained.
argument. I
Look.
request the jury be disregarded.
Right. The jury's to disregard the last statement by the prosecutor. Speak facts. Let's talk about the facts.
Look where the bullet holes are located on Jayla Bass's head. Those are
Yes,
aimed,
closing arguments. Sorry.
precise, deliberate bullet holes. That is not an accident. That is not loading the firearm and it going off. Those are aimed, precise, deliberate shots. Shots that require some sort of control over the firearm. The shot through her cheek, her temple, and her forehead. Jennifer Michaelon says that shots that are within 6 inches of one another require her to use 2 hands to shoot. This is the shot on the son, JJ's head. Now, recall he's laying right next to his sister in bed, the top bunk.
Eris, I think here's where they get premeditation. If it had been one, it could have been heat of the moment. But when you choose to do the second shot and the third shot and the fourth shot and the fifth shot, then you are choosing, premeditating to do that again. They did imply, the defense has been subtly implying, they haven't come out and said it, but they do imply, because of the son's DNA being all over the gun, they do imply that it was him that shot his sister and himself multiple times. I don't think anyone's going to buy that. I don't, but I don't know juries.
We don't know what order they were shot, but consider the proximity when deciding how deliberate these shots are. Consider the proximity when deciding how precise they are. That is the evidence revealing to you premeditation, intent and deliberate shots. Shots that are aimed at the most crucial part of a human being's body. Recall, the scene will reveal to you the evidence necessary for you to come to a conclusion as to what happened. We know from the defendant's wallet that was seized, states 15. Recall that this wallet was taken directly found in a closed drawer within a wallet that was right next.
Okay, what she should point out, if we want to go premeditation, what she should point out is this gentleman is 5'7". The force multiplier trajectory, the freedom seed trajectory, started at 5'6" or 5'7". Now, he was claiming that this is an accident, but why would you hold a force multiplier over your head like this when you're allegedly cleaning it? Now, I would think that you would hold it more down here, but maybe I'm confused.
Next to the firearm used to murder Jayla and Jake, an attempt to murder JJ, and right next to the ammunition found. Note on this, height, Jermaine Bass Jr., 5'7". Why is that
Oh,
important?
she's going there.
Let's consider the trajectory of the fire's shot that killed Jayla Bass and almost killed JJ. We know that the children were laying next to each other. We know that the blood shown in the pooling of this photo of the top mattress belongs to Jayla Bass because of that. Consider the trajectory of the bullets you see. Knowing the bunk bed is, topmost portion of the bunk bed is 5 feet 5 inches tall. The defendant is taller than that. We know that damage A is at a downward trajectory, meaning that when the gun was fired, it has to be angled upward, downward to cause that downward trajectory. We know that this shot goes all the way through to the bathroom in a downward trajectory because we saw evidence of that. The scene will reveal the evidence necessary for you to decipher what happened. Whoever was holding the firearm had to have been taller than 5 feet 5 inches tall. We know that there was no stippling found on the wounds of Jayla Bass, meaning that whoever fired the weapon pointing right at her had to be at least, from the testimony, at least 2 to 3 feet away from her. If you follow the trajectory of the bullet holes that you see here, take them out 2 to 3 feet, that puts you off the bed. At a height consistent with the defendant holding his hands above the rail and pointing it downward. We know also that the person standing on the outside of this bunk bed, at least 2 to 3 feet away from where the children were laying. We know the trajectory as well because of the impact bloodstain pattern. Now, Anna Cox, when she testified, was very educational when she was describing to you what bloodstain pattern analysis is. She explained that it's a discipline of forensic science focusing on identifying, documenting, and analyzing bloodstains in order to interpret what caused the distribution. Basically, in layman's terms, she says she looks at the bloodstain and tries to decide how it got there. She went on to explain to us different kinds of bloodstains and what they mean and how she interprets them. One of them was an impact bloodstain, or an impact spatter pattern, which she said a natural object striking the liquid blood. She said she considered things such as physics, the natural laws of gravity, and introduction of a mechanism such as force. So if something were to hit an object of bleeding, it would cause a certain pattern, blood pattern stain. Directionality, flow pattern. She said in her expert opinion, based on the DNA evidence that was swabbed from this area, it showed that both JJ and Jayla's heads were in this corner of the bed at the time in which they were shot. That's an important piece of evidence because, remember, we end where it began. When defense mentioned in her opening statement to you that their client didn't pull the trigger. Well, members of the jury, it's one thing to make a statement like that and then move on. But it requires you to pull the thread, to follow the analysis, to let the scene reveal to you what happened. And you have to follow it until the end. The end is the DNA on the firearm. Now, recall the series of events. The children are shot. They're on the top bunk.
No, but we do know that he was eligible for concealed carry during the time. So he did have a concealed carry card. The defense was, very diligent in pointing that out. I don't know. Shirley wasn't really mentioned much in this case. I don't know if it was because she would have been more of a hindrance or they didn't want to traumatize her anymore. Probably not wanting to traumatize her anymore. I don't think they needed her. Honestly, it was a pretty pared down case. They got the essentials in and moved fairly quickly. So we didn't get that information and they weren't charging him for having a force multiplier when he wasn't able to. So I'm not quite sure. Now, it is alluded to that it might have been Shirley's force multiplier because all of the supplies, ammo, a holster and everything were in like a leather tan backpack purse kind of thing. So I'm not quite sure is the real short answer with that.
When law enforcement arrives, the defendant is holding his son who's profusely bleeding from a gunshot wound to the head. When he's asked, "Where's the firearm?" he explains to the deputies that it's on top of the dresser, and later explains that it's in the drawer in the master bedroom of the dresser. So let's keep pulling the thread, because what does that mean? It means that after he murdered his daughter Jayla, and after he shot his son in the temple, that he left them there. walked all the way past 2 bathrooms into the master bedroom, and he opened up that silver drawer. He put the gun and the magazine inside, and he closed that dresser drawer before doing anything else. That's significant. The gun was in a closed dresser drawer. If an accident happened in the room with his children, would not a reasonable parent render aid immediately?
Objection, Your Honor, improper argument.
Overruled.
It's not reasonable to believe that it was an accident. It's not reasonable to believe that after this firearm accidentally discharged 5 times, that someone would then walk past 2 bedrooms into a different room, open a drawer, place the firearm inside of that drawer, and close it before doing anything else. It is not reasonable to believe. We also know the defendant didn't call 911.
Objection, improper argument, Your Honor.
Sustained.
The phone records show that at 10:34, the defendant dialed out to a number belonging to his mother. Anna Cox was right. The scene reveals the evidence necessary for you to come to a conclusion as to what happened. The defendant loaded his firearm with a magazine. He slid it back to load it. He then stood on the outside of that gray bunk bed, put his arm up and over the railing, and fired at his children as they lay sleeping in the top bunk of the bed. The evidence reveals that he shot his daughter Jayla 3 times, and she died. The evidence reveals that he shot his son JJ in the temple, causing severe injuries that he still suffers from. The DNA puts the firearm in his hands. The trajectory puts the firearm in his hands. And members of the jury, the evidence, when put together, forms an arrow pointing at the guilt of only one person in this case. The defendant, Jermaine Bass, murdered his daughter, Jayla Bass, who was 5 years old. And he did it with intention, he did it with precision, and he did it with premeditation. The defendant tried to kill his son, JJ. And he did it with intention, he did it with precision, and he did it with premeditation. And the law...
I swear to goodness, the mother did not testify. I swear to goodness, if the verdict comes back when I'm in the line of torture, I mean, the hour I wait to pick up my children from... And it is admittedly, sorry, I'm shaking a little bit. My legs are, as I said, have the mind of their own. So it's not shaky cam. I'm the one that's shaking, not the computer this time. Anywho, if they come back with a verdict when I'm in the car, I'm going to be so peeved. And it looks like they are just, you know, primed to do that. I'm like, it is 12:31. I'm giving you until 1 o'clock, people. At 1:30, I'm going to start getting irritated if you haven't come back with a verdict. Again, I want them to take their time and be, you know, good stewards of the law, but still, if they could work around my schedule, that would be lovely.
Any evidence demanding that you find him guilty.
Yep. Take down the exhibit.
All right. Gird your loins, cover your ear holes, cover your butts, people. It's gonna be annoying, lady. I'm sorry for our collective pain. Oh, God. We could do it at 1.27 times, but that wouldn't be giving her due-ness.
I was going to start talking about everything Mr. Terry talked about in opening statement. and what he did or didn't show. But I want to first go ahead and respond to Ms. Reader if I can. First of all, she said,
Oh, Jesus. No, these are closing statement girls. We are not going to do, she called me mean and this one did. Oh my God, no. Look, I have to go drive. I have to go drive. I cannot medicate myself. Why? 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 All right, no more self-pity. Let's go. We have her at 1.25. Let me put her at 1.5 and see how chick monkey she sounds. But I might have to take her back down to 1.25.
these are things we know. These are things we know are true. She said that Mr. Bass left the children home alone in their beds. So they're in their beds when he leaves. There's no evidence of that. You didn't hear any evidence that they were in their beds when he left. He followed
Is that
her
too
back.
fast, guys?
We have an hour later.
I don't want to.
With his car, supposedly leaving, a Nissan Titan design, but he followed her. There's not one shred of evidence of that. To confront Shirley for going to a family dinner is why he supposedly stopped them along on the way onto 275 at the West Shore exit. You heard not one piece of evidence that he stopped the vehicle. We're going to talk more about that later, but that it was to confront Shirley for going to the dinner? No, we didn't hear any evidence whatsoever about why or why not Mr. Bass did not go to the dinner. The children were laying down, we know that. Well, then why do we have bullet holes higher up? We don't know.
Because your client's an asshat. That's why. Because he was probably pointing it like they do in the rap videos. Let's be real. He was probably just, So, you know what? This woman is going to make me lose my mind.
That. Miss Reader actually said, quote, read between the lines. You remember when she just said that in her argument? Read between the lines. Let's forget about evidence. Let's forget about burden of proof. Let's throw it all out the window.
No, that is not what she said, you absolutely psychotic swamp donkey. What she said was you have to make inferences. With a circumstantial case, they are little building blocks. Yes, she probably should not have used that. She should have said that every piece of evidence in a circumstantial case is important. And when you stack those pieces and it becomes a wall and the wall has graffiti on it that says fucking guilty, then that's what we do. I mean, I probably wouldn't use that all in my closing statement, but that's what I would say. I kind of felt bad saying that. I try not to be too mean, but Look, I can barely walk today. I'm allowed to say whatever the hell I want, and this woman has been annoying me the entire week. And I have been somewhat nice. No, I haven't been nice to her, but honestly, I was provoked.
Folks, just read between the lines and convict a person of murder. She went through this long, elongated theory, and I think it was done multiple times, that Mr. Bass got the gun. He put bullets in it. He put the magazine in. He racked it. He took it into the kid's room. What evidence did you hear about any of that? You heard not one piece of evidence of where that gun was prior to the shooting of the children. You heard nothing. We do not know. You don't.
So the gun was possessed by the spirit of Alec Baldwin and Hannah Gutierrez Reed. Walked into the room and was like, I thirst for the blood of young children. And thank you, Kathy Michelle, for gifting 5 memberships. And those went to Maddie B, JKD Buck, Karen Singer, and I need to write you a thank you note, Karen, Greedy Bloke, and Pernilla. So congratulations, welcome to the Church of Mo, and thank you so much, Kathy Michelle. And just for an update, I am diligently looking for the original Cornhusker or Corn Rake Kill trial, so we can look at that next week because Baker is doing the retrial or case for a retrial. So I was going to look at the old one, and we're finding pieces of it, but they don't have all of it. So we'll go through what they have as a kind of refresh. And let me get
Read
this going
between
while
the
I'm doing.
lines in a case such as this or in any case.
She is
There's
such a butt
absolutely
monkey
no
from
evidence.
hell.
The state was presented where that gun was prior to the shooting, who loaded it, was it, we know nothing. And they have to have evidence. Ms. Michelin told you that they didn't do a trigger pull. They could have done a trigger pull on that gun and given you a poundage of how much force. I think Ms. Bradley had asked her, it's about just 5 pounds. But what did she tell Ms. Bradley? The trigger pull on that gun is as easy as popping off a soda cap. Popping off a soda cap is enough force to pull the trigger on that gun. So the state wants you to believe that Mr. Bass did all these things. Well, because that's their theory, that's what they want you to believe. He got the gun, he backed it, he put the magazine in, he pulled the slide back, all of that. But you gotta look at the evidence, not their theory. Remember, the judge will tell you the evidence is where you look, the exhibits and the testimony, not one piece of evidence.
Okay, here's a thought. I all on my own self with my little blonde and artificial intelligence red looked at all the circumstantial evidence and put together that theory myself. So why is it that you think that people wouldn't be able to put together that this woman is annoying me? Thank you, Sticky Widget, for gifting 5 memberships, and those went to AT1, Velu, Shelly B, and Maria Z. So congratulations. Welcome to the Church of Mo. I try every morning to do a musings with Mo, members only, and then it turns into everyone after 24 hours. Okay, I'll have to look. I just haven't seen full days, and to be honest, I know that my brain doesn't work correctly on days like this, so it is in my to look for list, because I do know that on days like this, I am not really always the best at being diligent and finding everything.
About that. Ms. Reader talked about
I like her at 1.5. She looks hilarious when she's gesticulating.
That could have been used in this case for certain, because there's not one thing found in the master bedroom that had anything to do with a free aid. Detective Hobelman and Corporal DeVoe both told you that. How do I know? How do I know that Mr. Bass's driver's license type is even correct? Not one shred of evidence presented as to that. They want you to read between the lines and assume. Whoever is
He lied for his
has
driver's
to tell you that
license?
5'5".
Crime?
We know that, said Ms. Reader. Where did you hear that evidence? What witness said that? Nobody did. Theory, not evidence. And again, going through how he then afterwards goes into the master bedroom, does everything, puts the gun up, and closes the drawer, she said. Right? Evidence. That drawer's open, so that's not true. This is
They pulled it.
That drawer.
They pulled it. Oh my God. I hate this woman so very much. From the depths of my soul and the fires of hell. Would you just stop talking? It's my plea to you. Also go to vocal training, because whatever you're doing with your voice is absolutely infuriating.
Is open. So what Ms. Reader said there is not supported by the evidence. There is not one shred of evidence.
And Mike Chaput, sorry, I missed you. Congratulations and welcome to the Church of Mo. And yes, I am talking over her.
Terry told you the following. Mr. Bass doesn't call 911. You will find out who he calls. Well, Shirley calls 911, or Mr. Evans actually calls 911 and gives the phone to Shirley. Shirley's calling 911. Why is there a reason for the spouse to call 911? You heard.
Because he's the one that shot the gosh darn gun, you widget. I'm sorry, Sticky Widget, I shouldn't have used your name in vain. Oh God, she's got so much longer to go. Jesus wept.
Evidence, not theory, but evidence, that DeQuan and then Shirley, the call is made at 22:33, the 911 call. Mr. Bass does not
I know, I
call
keep
his mother
refreshing my
until
news
afterwards.
page.
Evidence, that's what you heard. Mr. Bass isn't calling Domino's to order a pizza. He's not calling for takeout. While Ms.
He's
Bass
calling his
is on the
mom.
phone with 911, that is when Mr. Bass calls his mom to tell her what happened to her grandchildren. So we know.
What did happen to our grandchildren? One ponders the many ways that a tight grouping could end up in one's skull.
From the timing that call to the mother is definitely after the 22:33 911. Look at the phone records. It is 22:34 right after. We also know that it's a very quick call. 5 seconds may not have even been answered by his mom. All right, number 2. Mr. Terry says, Mr. Bass tells the police exactly where to find that gun. Presuming, I guess, he knows specifically because he's the one that pulled the trigger. Well, no, not quite. And Ms. Reader even pointed this out in their argument, is he's telling them that it's on the dresser. It's not until later that he says, look in or on the dresser. Ms. Reader even told you that. And we have no evidence of where that gun was prior to the shooting. None at all. Ms. Reader made a comment about Mr. Bass making the statements to the deputies that first responded. The statements are made mere minutes after the shooting. Well, the 911 calls at 22:33. The statements, she said herself in her closing, 22:46. That's 13 minutes. Marital discord. Mr. Terry said, oh, there's marital discord, and maybe that's why he did this tragic, horrible act. What evidence did you hear of marital discord? Absolutely
Thank
none.
you so much, Sticky
Again,
Widget, for
actual
stopping
evidence,
by.
Not their theory. Because they have the burden of proof to prove beyond and to the exclusion of a reasonable doubt. You did not hear about any marital discord from China Gadsden, nor did you hear about any marital discord from Ms. Romeo. Mr. Terry said, you will never know why. He's correct, absolutely, when he says they do not have to prove motive. You will never know why. Well, we don't. And the problem
How is this,
there
you
are so many
guys?
unanswered questions over this tragic, terrible event that took place on August 29th of 2022.
If this is
Many
too
unresolved
fast, let me
questions,
know. I will
mistakes made,
totally
mistakes
slow
by
it
many
down.
different people. Too many unresolved or answered questions. Reasonably doubt. Mr. Bass didn't go to Ruth Chris because he was supposed to stay home to take care of the children. Mr. Terry said that. Where'd you hear that? Did you hear that evidence? Stayed home because he had to take care of the children. No evidence.
He's the fucking father. Yes, he has to stay home to take care of the children. It shouldn't have, it goes without saying. It goes without saying that a father who is within the family home, when the mother goes out, would watch the children. I don't know what she did with her children.
Nada. There was no evidence presented of why he did not go to Ruth Chris that evening. Something is not right in that house. Okay? What evidence did you hear that there were any problems in the house? Nada. Mr. Terry, Mr. Bass was angry and aggressive on West Shore in 275 when he came upon Miss Bass and Miss Gadsden. Well, no, that's not what we heard. We specifically did not hear from China Gadsden say he was angry. You didn't hear that. Nada. She claims he comes upon them, and all he says, were you drinking? Is that why she's driving? That's it. They're not arguing, they're not beefing, he's not yelling. Shirley wasn't phased by it, China said. And that's it. And, folks, that's if you believe this story. Okay, we have China Gadsden, the one she is related to Shirley. And one of the most critical things is, if this was a big deal, and this somehow is their great motive, theory, that's what they want you to believe to convict somebody of first-degree murder, why is it not talked about earlier? China Gadsden never says a word until over 14 months later that this allegedly took place. Corporal DeVoe even told you there would be times he would call China. She hung up on him. I don't talk to you. I'm not going to talk to you. All of the behavior of everybody in this case, Mr. Bass, Mrs. Bass, the witnesses, you can consider. And their behavior and everything that got done that evening. And China Gadsden never at any time said Shirley was upset. Now, I was trying to make this comment. Do you honestly believe in Florida that they're sitting there, stopped in the middle of the road, and they're just sitting there and Mr. Bass goes out and he says, are you drinking? Were you drinking? Is that what she's driving? That's it, right?
You guys, I weep for humanity. This is a little too fast for me. Sorry. It's going to have to go to 1.25. But there are people on Law and Crime that are like, the state has no evidence. Okay, I'll keep her at 1.75. She's not that bad actually on this one because it'll get over sooner. But there are people on Law and Crime that do believe that he is innocent and they didn't have enough evidence. Now, I'm not going to bring Law and Crime chat over here because the ghost of Nancy Grace scares me. No, Law and Crime isn't, but some people on the chat waiting for the verdict are saying that the state has no evidence and that's why it's taking the jury so long. So I did want to give opposing opinions. They're opposing rationality and truth. So let's try this. I just want to get her done and over with at this point.
That there's a ton of cars backed up, and that one person is honking. This is Florida. Not one was upset. Now, I just want to make this comment.
Not even the feed could handle her. I do say that I find it a little odd that all of this would happen on an exit ramp and no one would call the cops and say, this weird thing happened. I'm not saying it did or didn't happen, but there you go.
Do you honestly believe in Florida that they're sitting there, stopped in the middle of the road, and they're just sitting there and Mr. Bass goes out and he says, are you drinking? When you drinking? Is that what she's driving? That's it, right? That there's a ton of cars backed up and not one person is honking. This is Florida. Not one person is honking or blaring, saying, you guys need to go. That's what China told you. We just finally asked her, well, were the cars like honking if this story is true? Oh, no, it's fine. They were just waiting. Come on. It's just unbelievable. This was an act to kill, Mr. Terry said. Well, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence of premeditation, the intent to kill, reflection, enough time to reflect on that? Where is the evidence that the premeditation and intent to kill?
One. And then you decide to do two. That's premeditation. One could have been an act of passion. One could have been, I'm so pissed off, I pulled the trigger, I didn't think about it. I still say the act of pulling a trigger is a decision, but there you go. You could say that's in the heat of passion, provoked, high drama. 2, 3, 4, 5. That is premeditation, and I swear to goodness, I hope the state brings that up.
Was in his mind before the act. We have no problems talked about, no issues, no evidence, none. No threats, nothing. Shirley was frantic on the 911 call, of course. She's frantic, she's upset. But you gotta look at her overall behavior in this case. You can look at all of that, and you should look at all of that. The 911 operator is constantly asking her, who did this? Who did this? Is the shooter still there? This is a mother. Supposedly, Mr. Bass has just shot and killed her daughter and shot her son. She refuses to answer that question. Never answers that question. At one point,
All right,
Ms.
I
talked
hate
about this in
her.
opening. She specifically says, no, I don't need police, I need an ambulance. And of course, you'll have a call to listen to. We also have absolutely no clue who she's yelling at on that call. We know for a fact from the call, she definitely
I am so woefully behind on Karen Reed. I do know Baker, the Broken Baker has covered the entire case extensively. He did invite me on as the kind of local rube who has no idea what's going on in the case. So I do know something happened yesterday. I'm just not quite sure if them. So I'm glad that that case is moving somewhere outside of the nexus of hell that it was in. Maybe a little bit closer to done. I don't know.
yelling at the 911 operator for not getting there fast enough to bring the ambulance. We know, and she says it, how upset she is with the operator. Look at when the call comes back. She even says, I have the same person. I got you again. So we know she's upset with the operator. And listen to that call. Did you catch the comment about what Shirley said? Her son was supposed to be sleeping, but then he ran. What? Okay. Well, that just further shows me we do not know what happened in that house at the time of the shooting or what happened before. Listen to that call. You're going to hear her say that. And then he ran. Supposedly, as Ms. Reeder says,
Why didn't you call any witnesses? If you have another theory, if you have an alternate idea, if you have proof that none of this happened the way it did, then why didn't you mount a defense? If you could prove what happened, if you could prove that Shirley was a terrible person, that she did this, that, JJ did this, why didn't you mount a defense? Is it because all of this is BS and smoke and mirrors and you have nothing that you can actually do because your client is a lying liarton who lies? I don't know. Ponder that.
the children are shot in their beds. That makes absolutely no sense. Now, we know from Mr. Evans, the Colin Evans, that there's about 5 to 10 minutes span of time. That's what he testified to. Evidence. 5 to 10 minutes from the time he heard the shots to Shirley coming to his door, because she doesn't know the address where she lives, she doesn't have her phone. 5 to 10 minutes between the shots and Shirley coming to his door. What is going on in that 5 to 10 minutes? Ask yourself that. What is going on with Shirley, Mr. Bass, in those 5 to 10 minutes? We also know there's 2 parts of the call. There was no evidence presented by the states to show the time difference. In other words, was it 5 minutes between the calls? Was it 5 seconds? We don't know, because they didn't present that. And we certainly know, continuing that second call, Shirley is still not happy with that operator. Take that in consideration as well as the first deputies at the scene. They're all equipped with body cam. Rahman, Rainey, White, and Jones. The big picture is what you can look at. Deputy Jones, I asked her repeatedly, who shot her son? He's asking a mother whose son has been shot in the head. Who shot their son? It's the person with the gun in the area, please. Now,
Why aren't you bringing up Jayla? Very interesting. Very interesting that you too haven't paid any gosh darn respect to Jayla. Do you, like your client, believe that she was, not worth saving or talking about? Interesting that you're focusing on him.
Never. His testimony, evidence. Shirley never answered him, never answered his questions. Deputy White, evidence. The woman was yelling at the officers. We were just trying to help. Deputy White, Shirley was uncooperative in providing any answers. Evidence. Now, the state, I anticipate Mr. Terry's going to get an opportunity to come up and talk to you when I'm done. Please keep in mind what he says and think what I might say in rebuttal to that, and keep in mind he has the burden of proof. But I anticipate, since this is my only time to talk to you, he's going to say, well, she was traumatized, right? She's traumatized. So you got to look at that whole big picture about her uncooperativeness, and we'll talk more about that. But it doesn't
Oh God,
explain
please don't talk
this
more.
case
This
and
is
not answer simple
punishment.
questions posed to her by 911 operator or the deputies. Who shot your son? My husband. Never.
Okay, so story time. For those of you who don't know, I do have CRPS. I got it because I was out walking to try to not be semi-fluffy, out in my rural neighborhood, not lighted, and I got startled by a deer, fell into a drainage ditch with all of my coordination, and broke my ankle. Now, I had my cell phone on me. This will make sense, I promise. I had my cell phone on me. I know the code to get in my cell phone. It has not changed in 10 years since I met Mr. Mo. So my cell phone code has not changed. I could barely remember the code, and then Mr. Mo is on my speed dial. So when I called him, I was giggling because I giggle when I get hurt or when I'm upset. Apparently crying isn't my thing, but hysterical and inappropriate giggling is, which is hard to explain to people. Anywho, I could barely call him, and I could barely communicate where I was and what had happened. So I don't doubt that there was no way. I very much am ticked off at the implication that Shirley was doing this just to be uncooperative. Just because, it was minor. It was me. It was just a broken ankle. But I could barely function, so I can't imagine what would happen if one of my children was deathly hurt or had passed away. So this is some BS.
Nada never says that.
And
Deputy
one of my
Jones,
favorites,
the lady
yes.
wasn't very helpful. That's not helpful at all. Now, Mr. Bass, another comment from opening statement by Mr. Terry. Mr. Bass never tells the police his daughter is upstairs. Not true. Evidence. You heard from Deputy White. Body cams, you got beeping going on, they're difficult to hear. Deputy White said that Mr. Bass did say something about a little girl, and he documented it in his report. It wasn't just off his body cam. He told you that. I heard that. What you kind of hear on the body cam is something like, anyone upstairs? No. Then you can hear something. Watch those body cams again. Something is said right after that. And I believe that Deputy Rainey's body cam may be one of the best to pick it all up. But listen to the word daughter. Then, is anyone else in the house? No. But I make that up. Deputy White took that witness stand under oath and said he did say something about his little girl. But Mr. Bass is not allowed to be traumatized. Well, Shirley Bass is. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Now, Deputy Jones even told you, well, I didn't hear that. I didn't document it in my reports that he said no, but I was walking behind Deputy White. And I just walked quickly past Mr. Bass. And he specifically told you he might have heard something, Deputy White, that Deputy Jones did not. Evidence, that was his testimony, because Deputy Jones was behind Deputy White. Evidence, he told you that. So I ask that you watch those body cams again. I'm sure Mr. Terry can say the same thing. Now, let's continue on concerning Shirley Bass.
Oh, Jesus.
Her daughter was killed in a tragic event. Her son was shot in the head. But she desires to be uncooperative with Detective Cabot. He asked for her phone. Remember, her phone was in the crime scene. Some member of HBSO went into the crime scene, took her phone out, and gives it to her. So she has her phone back. Mr. Bass's phone, able to be downloaded, is on the couch. You can see it, right?
She's not
He's
the
asking,
suspect.
"Oh, download the phone." No.
She didn't.
Never does she give her phone to him to do.
She didn't have an excited utterance, which was, I was cleaning it, and it did. They are deliberating live. They have been deliberating for 3 hours and 44 minutes. According to Law and Crime, the poll has not... Well, let me see if the poll has changed. No, the poll is still 88% guilty, 5% not guilty, and 7% hung jury. Oh Lord, she continues for a whole longness. Why? Why must we endure
And guess
this?
what, folks? You saw phone evidence, right? Now, I believe it was Corporal DeVoe said there wasn't anything on Mr. Bass's actual download, but that's why they looked at it. That's why they was so right. Because it does reveal evidence, and it is important. She was hard to reach, he told you. This is a woman whose daughter was killed and son was shot in the head. Mary Lee House, you heard about Mary Lee House. It's kid-friendly. There's just the interviewer that works at Mary Lee House who's trained to speak to children in a kid-friendly environment. They have to do, and they want to do an interview.
They did it, and I do mean, so this incident happened on August 22nd. They tried to interview this little boy on September 7th. So August, September, that's not even a week after he watched his sister die from his father's hands, allegedly. And, got hurt himself, got a traumatic brain injury in which he had to be in a medically induced coma. And you're telling me you want to put his, inability to have, be good or non-combative, or, he didn't want to talk about this. I'm sorry, that's evidence of him being human, a little boy who has gone through way more than I have as an adult human being, so I give him all the grace for that. This woman is disgusting.
Of JJ, based on what happened, what he saw, what he did. On 9/7 of 2022 in the AM, Shirley absolutely refused to let her son be interviewed. Now, the state's going to say, oh, just Corporal DeVoe said he's just out of hospital. Well, then say that. Can we wait a little bit? No. She lies to Corporal DeVoe. You heard that. And said, well, I got here earlier, and I waited a long time. Remember he told you that? What else did he tell you? That's not true. Because I was here early, and she was not here. So we know that's false. And Corporal DeVoe, what other interesting thing did you hear about that first attempt to interview JJ? Oh, I never even saw the son. He doesn't know if she even brought him that day. So he says, okay. So she said it for the afternoon. Same day, September 7th of 2022, 3 p.m. Now at this point, JJ's uncooperative. We didn't hear testimony that he was in pain or he was upset. Look what had just happened to his sister. We don't hear that.
I get that she has to vigorously defend her client, but this tactic it's disingenuous to the nth degree, to the point where it's almost the slimy defense attorney sort of cliche. Again, I want his constitutional rights, to be defended. I want him to have a fair trial. But this insinuation, look, you guys, I will promise Scout's honor to go and watch this entire thing, but my legs cannot take her voice today. So what we are going to do is just assume that she has been talking, and we have all felt the collective pain in our souls. This is the Petty Express. I will come back and do her entire closing when I don't feel like absolute poo. But right now, we are going to get to the state, and I do apologize. Normally I don't fast forward through stuff, but I honestly, and from the bottom of my soul, cannot take her speaking anymore today. So I will redo this. I can't right now, and I apologize profusely to the chat. Gonna make an executive decision at this point. So I will come back to it.
Mr. Perry?
I just can't handle her today. I am going to take him.
All that and realize this woman's doing her job. She's trying to find anything she can pick apart in the state's case. Of course. She went through each witness and tried to find anything that they did wrong, any little tiny mistake. She spent a lot of time talking about Shirley Bass. And she ignored the strongest and the most important piece of evidence in this entire case.
The new thing is that I made an executive decision and I could no longer deal with her closing argument. So I fast forwarded to the rebuttal because I, honest to God, can't take her voice, and my legs hurt and I don't feel like dealing with her eardrums. So I did apologize, but everyone seems to be cool with it. I don't even know if I'm going to do a redux of it unless I have Veilhammer here to help me with the stupid. But it will be a while. the legal shenanigans theater of her closing and our hate rant will be a while. You are welcome. Thank you. I feel in the same boat today. Let's just hobble through the rest of this day and hope we get a better night's sleep tonight.
The words of her own client. The words of her own client. The first words that came out of his mouth when the deputies come in there to this horrific scene. She completely ignored that, ladies and gentlemen. She completely. And in fact, I guess because she's ignoring it so hard, she didn't even get right what he said. He never said he was cleaning the gun. He said he was removing the magazine. That's how much she's ignored it, is that she didn't even get the words he said right. Listen to the tape. Listen to.
Mr. Terry, please accept our magnanimous invitation to the Petty Express, because that was a mic drop of epic proportion. Oh my God, she didn't even listen to her own client, and it was putting in the magazine, not cleaning it. Whew. I have no idea. I think it's where you close your eyes and rest, and your body doesn't hurt, but I don't remember what that is. I'm just kidding. I do get good nights sleep sometimes. So I'm grateful for those. They, and sometimes I have bad nights, but, it is what it is. We get through it, we hobble through the day, and then we hope that we get maybe some good rest, or at least a smexy dream. Come on. I mean, Henry Cavill comes to save you. I mean, it swings and roundabouts. I mean, Mr. Moe comes to save me. He just happens to look like Henry Cavill.
What he says. I was trying to take out the magazine and it went off. I wrote down the quote exactly. I never said anything about cleaning the gun. But she's not listening to those words because she doesn't want you to listen to those words.
Objection, Your Honor, improper argument.
Sustained.
Those words are the strongest and most compelling piece of evidence in this entire case. She wants to tell you, well, that doesn't tell you who shot that gun. You know who tells you who shot that gun? He tells you who shot that gun. Jermaine Bass tells you who shot that gun. He said, I did it. And those deputies and those detectives began an investigation believing that man said it was an accident. So they want to look and see what's going on. And then it comes to this couldn't possibly be an accident with 5 shots. But he admitted it was him. And one of the last things Schlemmer said, something to the effect of, who is he protecting? Well, where's there any evidence he's protecting anybody? Oh, I can tell you who he's protecting. He's protecting himself. Those words, that lie, was protecting himself. He's caught. Hand in the cookie jar. Children shot. He's in the house. Murder weapons in his drawer. He's holding the baby. What does he say? It was an accident. That's the first lie he could come up with, right? You couldn't blame Shirley. We don't even know Shirley was outside. He said Shirley was in her room. Shirley wasn't in that room, for sure. And why would he protect Shirley? Why would he protect Shirley Bass if she shot her children? He wouldn't do that. Earlier in the night, he was over there confronting her about whether she'd been drinking. Did you protect her? That common sense says to you, ladies and gentlemen, that it's not going to happen. No. He came up, he knew he was caught, he came up with the first lie he could think of. It was an accidental discharge. And they're like, wow, for both of them? Yeah. I was taking out my magazine and it went off. But she wants you to ignore that. She barely even talked about it.
Objection, Your Honor. Improper argument and shifting the burden.
Improper argument sustained.
That is the strongest piece of evidence in this case. You can rely on that evidence and that evidence alone. That's an admission, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
He admitted to those deputies that he fired that weapon. Came up with a ridiculous excuse, but he admitted it. But he admitted it, leaving just enough truthful nuggets in it because he couldn't quite figure out the right way to lie. So that's what he says. Accidental discharge. Okay, that's the first thing he says. I was trying to take out the magazine and it went off, right? They was both in bed. He said that. They was both in bed. No one told him where they were or what was going on or where they'd been shot. That's actually true. They were both in bed. How did he know that? How did he know they were both in bed? Because he's the one who pulled the trigger. They
Oh,
was
don't
both in
nod,
bed.
sir. That's a
Physical
bad
evidence
idea.
shows they were both shot in that bed. I was in their room. Now he even puts the room where they were shot. He's got the bed, the room. That's all true. So he's mixed in his lie with a little truth. I was in their room. They was both in bed. Where was Shirley? She was in her room. Again, those are his words, not my words. Not words by the Corporal Gabo, not words from Anna Cox, not words from Jennifer Michael.
This is the state's rebuttal. The opening, the closing state, the first closing was done by the female attorney. I think she did okay. I will say that emotions are running fairly high in this case because the state has gotten a lot of objections of improper argument sustained from the defense. So I do think that emotions are running pretty high. I do think I skipped through the defense's closing because it was the woman who sounds like her soul's been sucked out and a Karen's been replaced in there. Did the closing, and she was basically blaming Shirley, blaming JJ, blaming anyone, and I'm in enough pain, I don't need more. So we are going to the rebuttal where he is laying down facts that we have in this case and not, speculating wildly like the defense was.
Not words from any of those people. Those are the words of the defendant, the man right there. So every time Ms. Lemmer says, well, that doesn't tell you who shot the gun. Well, I tell you who told you who shot the gun. He did. So Ms. Lemmer said, he said, maybe that's not true. Another thing, and again, you need to rely on your own memory of the evidence. You need to rely on the evidence that you take back there with you. But she just pulled that picture out to show the drawer open and the gun being. Watch the video camera of the body camera with Daniel Jones when he goes in to clear that room. That drawer where that gun is found is almost completely closed. It may be open about this much. It is clear that they opened it more to put the markers on there. So yes, in fact, the defendant did take that gun after his 2 children were shot in the head, and rather than lend aid or render aid to them, he took that gun and he walked through that house while his children were bleeding out in their beds, took the time to do that, remove the magazine. Oh, again, a little nugget of truth thrown in there with that lie. I was taking out the magazine. Yeah, he did take out the magazine. Why, when your children have just been shot in the head, are you taking the time to walk down the hallway, go into your bedroom, pull out the magazine, place the gun down in there with the magazine, and close the drawer? Does that make any sense to you, ladies and gentlemen? So that was the way he did that lied, but producing enough nuggets of truth that his statements actually had some truth in them. And only the only person, the shooter, would know what those statements were. Where they were shot is huge. We only know that from Anna Cox because Anna Cox, who's a bloodstain expert.
Why am I getting people that are militantly asking me if I want solar panels? Yes, I do, but I'm not going to get solar panels from some random person who called me. I mean, call me crazy, but I trust Ron Popeil more than I do. Actually, I trust the guy that sells Sham Wow more than I trust solar panels through, random phone sales.
Who you heard from, was able to tell you that based on the bloodstain pattern, there was only one place these 2 children were shot, and that was in that bed, in that little corner up there. They were both shot in the head, up in that northwest corner of the bed. And he knew that. They was in bed. He knew that scene. He knew where they were. I mean, that's as close to a confession as you're going to get, ladies and gentlemen. He's actually giving you details about the crime. The location. Specific enough to where they were in the bed. The shooter would know that. person who pulled the trigger would know that. That is the strongest and most compelling evidence in this case. And to ignore that, because the medical examiner wrote upward trajectory instead of downward trajectory, or the vice versa, would be an injustice. Don't lose sight of the forest through the trees. Don't ignore the strongest and most compelling evidence of this case, because the crime scene investigator wrote bottom bunk instead of top bunk. She made a mistake. So not only do his words follow along with the evidence perfectly, other than the accident, that's the part he didn't want to admit. He didn't want to admit his intent. It was an accident, I'm
Objection,
sorry.
Your Honor, comment on silence.
Overruled.
So instead of saying his intent, which was to kill those kids, it came out as, oh, it's an accident. But on top of that, the physical evidence also corresponds with that. The location, just where he said they were. Where they were shot, just where he said they were. His DNA is on the gun. He knew where that gun was. They'd be like, where's the gun? Where's the gun? It's on the dresser. Well, it's in the dresser. He knew. How did he know? Because he put it in there. Who does that? A man with a guilty conscience. A man who's trying to hide away the murder weapon. That's who does that. This has been an accident. If someone else had done it, do you think he would take the time or bother to go and put the gun away? No, of course not. And it's no coincidence that gun was next to his wallet, because that's his gun. And you stuck it down in there. The shots were from off the bed. That's clear. If the shots to Jayla were from a person on the bed, meaning JJ, there would have been stiffening, ladies and gentlemen. There's no way that he would not have been shot within 12 inches, she would not have been shot within 12 inches. And there would have been some evidence of a close range fire if JJ had fired that gun. There would have been evidence of a close range fire.
We finally
That gun was fired
circled
from off
back.
the bed, at least 2 feet away.
And I'm a redhead, so
Who could
Jen
have done that?
Psaki.
Not JJ. Oh, I know who could have done it, the man who admitted that he did it. Ms. Schlemmer says, she knows me, she knows I'm going to talk about transfer. Of course I'm going to talk about transfer DNA. And yes, it is a very heavy statistic, so I have no doubt that JJ touched that gun, or that some fluids from JJ in some manner or another transferred from the hands of that man onto that trigger and grip. And remember, when she says trigger grip, she swabs the entire grip where you hold the gun as well as the trigger. So it could have come from the trigger, or the grip, it could have come from the trigger, or trigger could come from anywhere. But yes, that was transfer DNA. Now, possibly, and as we know, one of these shots goes awry. 5 shots were fired, 4 hit their target, 1 went awry. It went into the wall, and into the bathroom. How could that maybe have happened? Maybe JJ, in an attempt to save his life, grabs the gun and pushes it away from his head, from the villain. And the gun goes up and shoots away from him. Maybe JJ did grab that gun. Maybe it was transfer DNA. But there's no evidence that JJ would have shot this gun. He's an 8-year-old boy. No evidence he had any animosity with his sister, any issues with his sister. Those shots were targeted. But also remember, he shot himself. Are we to suggest that he shot his sister 3 times, then shot into the wall, and then shot himself in the head, and hit his hand at the same time? He didn't shoot that gun. That's silly. It's silly to believe that he would shoot his sister and shoot himself. And that just makes no sense, ladies and gentlemen. No sense.
Preach, 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 preach,
Because his
preach.
DNA was on there, but it's easily explained.
Yeah, that was a step too far for me. I think the defense really miscalculated with that step. And I know I'm looking at law and crime, and there are some people that believe that JJ could have done this. that the mother was complicit because they left the firearms out. Now, I will say that leaving your force multipliers in the bag, if you're a concealed carry person with small children, and you leave that bag outside of a force multiplier safe, in my opinion, that is unsafe. Now, I'm not the force multiplier police, but I believe that is very unsafe. Now, you got to account for, it's like South Park said in the 9/11 episode with the Hardley boys. Some people are just, well, they've gone full Tropic Thunder, if you catch my drift.
You know whose DNA is not on there? The person Ms. Schlemmer's talked about the most in the first half of the closing, Jermaine Bass. She is excluded from the Griffin trigger. Excluded. She did not hold that gun that night. If she had held that gun and fired those shots, you better believe some of her DNA would be on that gun. She did not have that gun. There's zero physical evidence whatsoever that suggests Jermaine Bass did this. You know, and I know that you all may be sitting here wondering, well, we didn't get to hear from Shirley. I wonder what she said. Well, I'm going to tell you something right now. You did hear from Shirley. All of you did. You heard from her in that 911 call. And I urge you very hard to listen to that call. Listen to it, compare it with the video we have of her outside the Quan Evans apartment. Listen to how her voice changes, timeline, and everything. Because I'm going to suggest to you what happens. And you watch this and you will see that this is in fact what happens. And listen to the audio carefully, and you will hear this. First of all, notice that when she is outside, the very first time she's outside, and you need to watch the video very closely, and it's hard to see sometimes, but if you watch it enough times, you will know where the door is to the Bass household. You will see her come out, and she comes out at 21:15, which is 10:21. So she comes out a while before she ends up at the Quan Evans house. And watch her out there. You'll see her in the parking lot, and she's kind of walking like this, and then she'll walk, and then she kind of walks another way, and then you'll see her walking this way before she ever comes to the area where DeQuan Evans is. She's out of that house for a while. So what does she say when she's on that phone call? You hear her, she's frantic, she's terrified. She can't believe what's going on. She knows there were gunshots in her house. She says, someone shot my whole family. She's petrified, she doesn't know what's going on, she knows there were gunshots. And then she says, I don't know what happened in this house. She doesn't know. She didn't see it. She tells you right there, I don't know what happened in this house. She knows there were gunshots in her house, and she's scared for the safety of her family, but she says, I don't know what happened in this house, but she is scared. You can hear that in her voice. But she's not super confrontational, right? You can just hear she's like scared, and she's not making a lot of sense when she talks. But then watch on the video. She has that phone for about 2 minutes and 20 seconds, or 2 minutes, 40 seconds, and you'll see she starts walking back into the parking lot, and she heads back to the house. And look at the house, you'll see the door open. And that's when she first screams, in really loud, clearly not at the 911 operator, as they would have you believe. She's clearly speaking to someone out there, and she says, what the fuck is wrong with you? What the fuck is wrong with you? You know who she's talking to? She's talking to that man right there. What the fuck is wrong with you? Because she knows he did something. She knows he had that gun, and she knows he did something. But she doesn't seem to really know what yet at this point, because you don't see her say anything, and then she calls him, you fucking asshole. And apologize for my language, but I'm trying to quote to you exactly what was said on that day, on that phone call, which I urge you to listen to. But it's at the 2-minute and 40-second mark. Her voice, her inflection, everything changes, because at that moment, she has now seen Jermaine Bass, and she's seen him holding her boy. She says, that man was playing with his freaking gun. I don't know what the fuck happened. Again, I don't know what the fuck happened. She doesn't know. All she knows is that her husband, of all people, had a gun, and suddenly gunshots are going off, and he walks out with his son in his arms. And that's when there's a realization, because you'll hear that now suddenly she starts to get some more specific. My babies, my kid been shot. She doesn't say my kids, she said my kid. Singular. At this point in time, she probably doesn't even know Jay was shot up there. But now she's seen JJ. Bring the ambulance. My son is bleeding. My son. Again, she doesn't say Jayla. Why? Because at this point in time, she was outside, and she sees her husband come out, and he's got the boy. She doesn't even know what's going on with the girl. She doesn't realize that her daughter is dying upstairs. This is Shirley's testimony, ladies and gentlemen. Unfiltered, raw, emotional, at the time, the most trustworthy statement you could possibly get from an individual when they're in the experience at the moment they're going through it. And what is she telling you, ladies and gentlemen? She doesn't know what's going on, but she knows something bad is happening in her house, which means she's not there, she has nothing to do with it, she's not involved with it. The phone disconnects. You hear her come back in. If you listen, you can tell there's an echo. She's inside that house at that point. She yells,
Very good
leave him alone,
points.
don't touch him. She says, I swear to God, if my son died, and you can hear all this on that phone call. And yes, she's very rude to the 911 operator, but remember, she's now realizing that her son is shot in the head. She doesn't know what's going on, she doesn't understand it, but she knows that that man right there, Jermaine Bass, has something to do with it. That man playing with his freaking gun. You know, Ms. Schlemmer wants to talk about how uncooperative Ms. Bass was. Well, what did the detective tell you? On the day this happened, while her daughter is lying there dead, and her son is in a coma in the hospital, she spends an hour talking to him about this. Think about this, ladies and gentlemen. This woman, whole world has just exploded. Everything has exploded. The husband, the man she's in love with, is now being investigated or believed to have shot and killed her daughter and her son, who could potentially die, is there in the hospital. Her mind is reeling. And Ms. Schlemmer wants to sit here and talk about her cooperation. She spent an hour. Detective or Corporal Gallo told you she spent an hour talking to me. And he went back the next day and talked to her for even longer. And Ms. Schlemmer wants to call her uncooperative? You know what uncooperative is? It's lying to police. Who do we know did that? Mr. Bass. She wants to get up here and tell you, well, he was cooperative that whole time. No, he wasn't. How is lying to police cooperative? You heard Corporal Gallo. We based our investigation on what he said happened. They weren't looking for a whodunit or who's the other person that might have done this. He told them I did it. But it was an accident. So that's how they're basing their investigation. So again, remember we talked to you earlier, we don't have to prove motive, okay? And I think you all understood that, and we went through that in some great detail. But I told you, you're going to get some evidence that something was not right, and I think you heard it. You heard it from China. China Datsun, who got up here. And she told you that she was being aggressively tailgated as she left Ruth's Chris. And that's why we presented all that evidence to you, to show you and to corroborate what China said to you. Because we know that that man left those kids alone, got in his Nissan Titan truck. We see him pulling out from the residence. We see him driving down Fletcher towards the interstate. We have his phone records that show his phone going all the way down to West Shore, where he's there for a couple of hours. I'm not sure what he's doing there, but he's there, waiting, until Shirley leaves, at which point he aggressively tailgates her. China's, what is this guy doing? She doesn't know it's him. The only evidence of anyone being aggressive, acting abnormal.
Am I frozen for everyone? Bond, you might refresh yours. I don't know if I'm frozen for everyone.
That night, is that man seated right over there? Not Shirley. How was Shirley? Shirley was fine. She was just normal. She's happy. It was her sister's birthday. And we're all out at dinner. The only person with any sort of aggression that night was that man seated right over there.
Okay.
And we proved to you, ladies and gentlemen, that. And we don't have to prove to you motive, but something was not right. He was clearly upset with Shirley for some reason. You don't follow your spouse to a dinner, wait outside, and then aggressively tailgate your spouse. Your spouse is leaving the dinner, and then get up in front and stop him from driving anywhere, and then go up and accuse him of drinking. You don't do that unless there's something very, very wrong. But Jermaine Bass took that anger home and unleashed it on his children. Whether to punish Shirley Bass or for whatever reason, we don't know, but he took that anger out and he put it into his children. Again, zero physical evidence to suggest Shirley Bass had anything to do with this. In fact, everything seems to indicate the opposite. You see her behavior, you see her franticness after this happens. You hear that 911 call. I'm telling you right now, listen to that 911 call. That is raw, that is pure, that is when a person is experiencing the moment. And you can tell she doesn't know what's going on. She is frantic and scared. But the few moments that she says anything that you can tell that she knows something happened, is she is accusing that man right there. What the fuck is wrong with you? You know, Shirley was the one trying to attempt to get help for her kids. We know Mr. Bass had his phone with him because he made a phone call. While Shirley's out there going, get that ambulance here, send an ambulance. Is Mr. Bass calling 911? And Ms. Leonard says, well, Shirley was doing it. How does he know what Shirley's doing? She was out there. She was outside. She was outside trying to find a man to help her. Someone who could give her a phone so she could call 911. Most likely because she was too terrified to go back in the house, not knowing what's in there. So she finds a man who helps her, gives her a phone and calls 911. And what is he doing with his phone? He's calling his mom. He's not calling for help for his children who've just been shot. Is that what a father does?
Objection, Your Honor, improper argument.
Sustained.
I'll allow it.
This was an
We've
accident.
allowed it, Your
The
Sureness.
first thing you want to do is call and get some help. Certainly not put your gun away immediately.
I love it.
Close the drawer and call mom. There were 4 people in that household. Jayla's gone. Sadly. JJ, Shirley, and Jermaine. And I've shown you, I believe, and proved to you that Shirley could not have done this. She is excluded from the DNA on that gun. She never touched that gun. At least not the grip or the trigger. Physical evidence does not connect Shirley in any way to this case. Her behavior afterwards is typical of a person who's just gone through a serious traumatic event. What's not typical is the behavior of the father, of Jermaine. So the only other question is, Jermaine or JJ? Well, remember, don't ever forget this, the father is the one who admitted he shot that gun. And that's why Ms. Reeder spent so much time with that crime scene investigator to talk about the angles and everything like that. To show you, ladies and gentlemen, that that shooting came from off the bed. And we know JJ was shot on the bed. And then also ask yourself this, 2 people, right? Those 2, JJ shot himself in the head? That doesn't make sense. But again, no evidence of close range firing. The angle from which those shooting shows that the shooting came from off the bed. This was not JJ. JJ had nothing to do with these shots. JJ was innocently laying there with his sister when that man walked in and brutally shot them both. That's what happened. It's so simple. It's right there in front of you, ladies and gentlemen. And you can pick apart a medical examiner's report of up or down.
I'm going to object, Your Honor, improper argument, denigrating the defense.
Sustained.
The defense needs to be denigrated.
We can look at little things like that, but what don't forget and don't miss the biggest stuff in this case. The strongest, most compelling, biggest piece of evidence. And that is the statement from Jermaine Bass on that night and the statement from Shirley Bass on that night. Look at that physical evidence, and you will know that these shots came from off that bed. That excludes JJ. No DNA of Shirley, that excludes Shirley. That leaves that man right there, and guess what? That man admitted he did it. It's very simple. This is not a complex case. There is no doubt whatsoever that on that night, on August 29th, 2022, Jermaine Bass, who told you he did, told those deputies that he did, that Jermaine Bass shot and killed his own daughter, Jayla Bass, and tried to shoot and kill his son. That, ladies and gentlemen, is murder in the first degree, premeditated, because look at the placement of those shots. This reader showed you that. There is a picture of Jayla Bass, and you can see those 3 shots, well placed, all within a very close range. Does anyone think an 8-year-old boy could do that? Really? Sure, an 8-year-old boy can fire a gun, but with that kind of precision and accuracy? I think someone who knows how to fire a gun. You know, we did introduce a lot of evidence of a lot of other bullets. That's to show that Mr. Bass knows guns. Yes, there's clips, holsters, there's all sorts of stuff. There's that one thing
I
where
feel
it
ya.
has all the bullets in it. We presented that evidence to you, ladies and gentlemen, and proved to you and showed you this was not an accident. This man knows guns and knows how to fire guns. He knows how to aim that gun. And he put those 3 bullets into the head of his daughter. And he put that 1 bullet into his son, who still has to deal with that 1 bullet. That's first-degree murder. That's attempted first-degree murder. And that is aggravated child abuse. Both counts. It's not only premeditated murder, it's felony murder, because he is guilty of aggravated child abuse for what he did to those children, and that makes it felony murder. And I'm convinced, ladies and gentlemen, that when you go back there, use your common sense. Think about what is the evidence to best rely on. The state has no doubt that you will return a verdict for guilty as charged on all 4 counts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
So I will switch over and let you see. So Toby Walker and some of these people are still on the JJ did this. But most people are on what the hell are you smoking? Now, it has been 4 hours, 2 minutes, and 20 seconds. Oh. Well, now it's 25 seconds. Or all of the seconds. Anywho, this is where we are right now. I do have to go pick up my sons. So I will jump on with the petty train when he does get a verdict. Now in Florida, or with this case, I am not sure how she is going to want to do her like sentencing and stuff like that. I don't know if they'll do victim impact statements. God, I hope not today. No offense to anyone. And I want to give the, victim impact statements the respect that they deserve. But I don't know that I can handle victim impact statements today. Yes, they have been deliberating for 4 hours. I don't know. Maybe they are diligently listening like they should to the 911 calls and not assuming anything and going through all the evidence. I don't know. I am not quite sure. But we do have several cases that I'm looking at for next week that do not involve children. If I can get enough of the original corn rake trial, we will be doing that. If not, then we might do another case that Jedi Jess sent us. So I will be diligently looking for those. But I am going to sign off now. I hope that you all have a wonderful day. Thank you beyond words for joining me on this Petty Express run. This has been a hard trial, and I'm glad that we have several options that are not children, but still buttholes next week. So that will be great. I will say that I hope they don't come back before I am back, which is a bit selfish of me, but juries are weird, so I have no idea what to predict. I have no idea what to tell you guys other than I think we all kind of decided guilty. So I'm going to let you guys go. Let me see who I can send you to. I'm always awful, bad, terrible at doing this. Oh, also, make sure to check that you are still subscribed. Some people have contacted me and, YouTube in its infinite wisdom has unsubscribed them to their favorite creators. So randomly always check that YouTube has not, decided that you no longer want to be around them. Megan Fox is playing Red Dead Redemption. Oh my gosh, that has to be a trip. All right, you guys, I think we need some funny times after this case. So I am sending you to Megan Fox playing Red Dead Redemption, because that has to be a hoot and a half. So have a wonderful, wonderful day, you guys.